Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Fiona G. The world awaits President Donald Trump's reciprocal tariff announcement today. We'll be bringing you a live look at the Rose Garden event at the White House at 4 p.m. Eastern this afternoon. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum says that her country will announce a comprehensive plan to counter a potential American tariff barrage. She says Mexico has an economic strategy regardless of President Trump's threats. Democrat lawmakers reacting. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has more to say about Trump's upcoming tariff announcement. A liberal Supreme Court candidate wins a key Wisconsin election as billionaires invest heavily, and a voter referendum result that could keep one conservative priority safe. New York City Mayor Eric Adams today saying he did nothing wrong as a federal judge permanently dismisses his corruption case. Our legal correspondent has the details. NATO allies prepare for Ukraine talks and will discuss strategies to improve Europe's defense capabilities. This, as Secretary General Rutte said, NATO has pledged over $20 billion to Ukraine.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
President Donald Trump is expected to impose sweeping new reciprocal tariffs on countries all around the world today. A White House Rose Garden announcement is scheduled for 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
This is obviously a very big day. He's with his trade and tariff team right now, perfecting it to make sure this is a perfect deal for the American people and the American worker. And the president has a brilliant team of advisors who have been studying these issues for decades. And we are focused on restoring the golden age of America and making America a manufacturing superpower.
The new duties are due to take effect immediately after Trump announces them, while a separate 25% global tariff on auto imports will take effect tomorrow. Trump says his reciprocal tariff plans are a move to even the playing field with other countries. The president has criticized other nations like India and China for charging the U.S. very high tariffs. The format of the duties is still unclear amid reports that Trump was considering a 20% universal tariff. With these new tariffs looming, which sectors will be most affected? Take a look.
Here are some of the sectors impacted by U.S. tariffs. Trump has suggested tariffs on pharmaceutical supplies, including medications. That would be a major change. Over the last few decades, pharmaceuticals have generally been exempt from tariffs. Trump in March threatened to put a 200% tariff on wine, cognac, and other alcohol imports from Europe. That was in response to an EU plan to impose tariffs on American whiskey and other products. The US leader has said tariffs on semiconductor chips would also start at 25% or higher and rise substantially over the course of a year, but he hasn't yet clarified when these will come into effect. On March the 12th, Trump increased tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports to 25% and extended the duties to hundreds of downstream products. The US is the world's largest aluminum importer and the second largest steel importer. More than half of those volumes come from Canada, Mexico and Brazil. At the end of March, Trump unveiled a 25% tariff on imported cars and light trucks. The levy is to be imposed on top of previous duties on imports of finished vehicles, starting on April the 3rd.
Leaders around the world are reacting to these looming tariffs, including Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney.
President Trump is in the process of trying to fundamentally restructure the U.S. economy, and that means that our economy here needs to change dramatically as well.
We do not believe in an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, because that always leads to a bad situation.
On our response, all I can say is that there will be one. It will happen at the appropriate moment after the expected announcement later this evening.
A trade war is in nobody's interest, and the country deserves, and we will take, a calm, pragmatic approach. We have a good deal of trade, a balanced trade relationship with the US, and I believe that our interests are best served by calmly trying to secure a deal which is in our national interest.
I stood up for Australia when they put on aluminium and steel tariffs. I continue to stand up for Australia and have said very
Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said today that Mexico does not plan to impose retaliatory tariffs on the U.S. She said Mexico will announce a comprehensive program tomorrow, but not a tit-for-tat response. Meanwhile, Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te also reacted today. He said Taiwan is an indispensable member of the global supply chain and would defend its company's interests. Trump officials say much of the focus of those tariffs will be on 15 countries that have the highest trade surpluses with the United States. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has referred to the countries as the Dirty 15, but has not named them. According to Census Bureau data, Taiwan is one of those 15. Other countries include China and South Korea, as well as the European Union. Democrats painted a gloomy picture of Trump's tariff strategy today ahead of the president's announcement this afternoon. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and other lawmakers called duties on imports a tax on Americans.
The worst thing about it is that it so hurts American families. It is estimated that the average American family will pay more than $5,000 out of their pocket to pay for these tariffs. That these tariffs will cost them $5,000 as the prices of everything goes up, whether it's groceries or cars or wood or you name it, across the board.
Lawmakers are taking their own measures to thwart Trump's tariff policies. Legislation authored by Virginia Senator Tim Kaine would end the emergency declaration that Trump signed back in February to implement tariffs on Canada. 5 Democrats, Independent Senator Angus King, and Republican Senator Rand Paul have co-signed this joint resolution. Kaine said the bill could come up for a vote today. U.S. auto sales jumped during the first quarter as the prospect of big import tariffs loomed over the market. Here's a breakdown of those numbers.
Figures out Tuesday show General Motors was the biggest winner, with a 17% surge in sales. It saw strong demand for affordable crossovers like its Chevrolet Trax SUV, which is made in South Korea. There were gains too for big Asian names, including Hyundai, Mazda and Honda. Hyundai Motor North America boss Randy Parker said the past weekend was the best he'd known for a very long time. He credited shoppers rushing to beat the tariffs. Now Donald Trump's new 25% levy on imported cars will kick in from April 3rd.
And this is very modest. And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff.
Analysts say that looks certain to drive a big spike in prices and a drop in sales as a result. The effect could be most pronounced for lower-cost vehicles, where profit margins are tighter. On Tuesday, Mercedes had to deny reports by Bloomberg that it would halt all imports of its low-end models. Now the fear is that some Americans will be priced out of the market altogether, with the average selling price of a new car already nearing $50,000. If that drives buyers to look for used vehicles instead, then second-hand prices could also jump. Overall, Tuesday's figures show U.S. new vehicle sales for the quarter hit 3.91 million units, or almost 5% up on this time last year.
The president's announcement is really the talk of the day, and joining us now to help clarify this tariff issue is Michael Busler, professor of finance at Stockton University and public policy analyst. Michael, it's always great to have you on. Take us back a couple centuries here, all right? Because I think in order to understand Trump's reasoning for these tariffs, you really have to look at the history of the U.S. According to a J.P. Morgan article, it says between 1798 and 1913, tariffs made up 50 to 90% of federal income. But now, in the current day, it's dropped to 2%. Michael, how do we get from there to where we are now?
So essentially, what was decided years ago was to keep tariffs relatively small. Let me start off by saying I'm a free market economist. I don't believe there should be tariffs placed on anything. Most governments say, well, there should be some tariff, and most of them said, well, 2.5% makes sense. So the U.S. said, we're putting a 2.5% tariff on everything brought into the country. The problem was, other countries didn't follow. China puts a 25% tariff on most goods that we sell there. The European Union on automobiles, we put a 2.5% tariff on their cars. They put a 10% tariff on our cars, and then they have a value-added tax, which actually increases the tariffs more. India, Harley-Davidson has a big market for their motorcycles in India. India put a 100% tariff on the motorcycles. So what did Harley-Davidson have to do? They went to India and built a plant there. The problem is the tariffs are imbalanced. We charge small, they charge high. What results from that, we buy a lot of stuff from them and our money flows out of the country. They buy much less from us, so very little of their money flows into the country. We have a huge negative balance of trade. This year, we'll import about $1.2 trillion worth of goods, and we'll export only $400 billion, a little less than $400 billion. That's $800 billion of our wealth flowing out of the country. And it's been like this, not quite that magnitude, but it's been like this for decades. President Trump says, we're not going to do that anymore. I want everybody to be fair, reciprocal. If we charge 2.5%, we want you to charge 2.5%. If you're not going to do that, we're going to place high tariffs and try to eliminate this negative balance of trade. Now, let me just say one other thing. All this applies to everything except steel, aluminum, and medical goods. Those are products that must be made in America for national security. We need steel. We need aluminum. We're the biggest importers in the world of both of those. We need to make them here. And medical products we need to make here too. So he's going to put a tariff on them. That'll raise the price of the imported goods. The American steel and aluminum will now be less expensive. Companies will start to make more, they'll sell more, and we'll have a better steel base and a better manufacturing base. The disadvantage is consumers, at least in the beginning, will see a jolt, an increase in prices, so it will have somewhat of an inflationary impact. But in the long run, we'll rebuild our manufacturing base. And because Trump's going to increase the supply of energy and bring energy prices down, he'll also bring the inflation rate down. Short-term pain, long-term gain.
Michael, I want to zone in here on that negative balance of trade, because that's something you also mentioned with Chris Spears during our weekend programming around a week ago. Here are some more numbers according to the World Population Review, right? Just last year, 2024, in terms of trade deficit, we had give or take $270 billion with China, $157 billion with Mexico. There was also a trade deficit with Canada, which is up north us. These are just a couple countries, to name a few. How do these numbers right now go on to impact everyday Americans' lives? How does it impact wages, prices, purchasing power?
So add up all of those things, and it comes up to the $800 billion negative balance of trade. So there are jobs that could be in the U.S. that are not, because we're buying foreign goods. In the short term, it will increase prices. So we will feel some short-term pain with some price increases. But again, Trump expects to offset that by dramatically lowering the price of energy. Energy counts for about 7% of the consumer price index directly and almost 30% indirectly, because it's energy to produce goods and services. The long term will see the manufacturing base in the U.S. get back to where it used to be. Steel and aluminum and other vital products will be made in the U.S. That will create more opportunities for Americans here in the U.S., and it will add to a little more security concerning national defense. Already, Honda said, we're not building a plant in Mexico anymore. We're going to build it in Indiana. Hyundai said, we're going to build a new steel plant and car manufacturing in the U.S. There's almost $4 trillion of new investment committed because these companies want to avoid the tariffs. And that's the ultimate goal of what the president wants to do.
So, Michael, going back to the president's announcement later today, a big question here that a lot of experts are asking is how will these tariffs be applied, specifically whether they're going to be reciprocal or universal. Which way are you leaning?
So I'm not exactly sure Trump has finally decided on this. Some of the sources I talked to yesterday said many of these countries are still negotiating. So if we're going to have tariffs, they have to be the same. A universal tariff of 2.5%, we put on 2.5%, they put on. That would get rid of this negative balance of trade. The other thing is these countries have to open up the markets to U.S. manufacturers. Canada, we can sell some of our dairy products, but once we hit their quota, they put a 200% tariff on. Now, they were asked about that. Why do you do that? And they say, well, we want to protect our dairy farmers. Well, the U.S. wants to protect our dairy farmers too. So if you're going to put these tariffs and quotas on and have this negative balance of trade, we can't have it anymore. We've got to even this out. So that's the basis of what Trump wants to do.
Michael, last question for you here. What is the president's ultimate goal here? Is it simply to just get other countries to remove their tariffs on U.S. goods and get rid of that trade deficit? Or does he see something bigger that we're missing here?
Two goals. One, he wants everybody to put on the same tariffs, get rid of these ridiculous tariffs and quotas that keep our American manufacturers and farmers in particular out of those markets. So he wants free trade, but free trade has to be fair. Whatever tariffs should be the same. Secondly, we want to rebuild our manufacturing base and bring back our production of steel and aluminum and especially medical supplies. Recall during COVID, American companies made masks in China. Well, they produced hundreds of millions of these, put them on a ship, sent them over here. China said, wait a second, we have a pandemic over here. Turn that ship around and bring it back. Now, U.S. had a shortage of masks. In the short term, a 30-40 cent mask was costing $5 because we had a shortage. We don't want that to happen anymore. Vital products we want produced in the U.S. Any trade that we have has to be fair. If these countries agree to fair trade, these tariffs would go away in a minute.
All right, well, 4 p.m. today, Rose Garden at the White House. It's going to be an exciting afternoon. Michael Busler, thank you so much for coming on today.
My pleasure.
When we come back, a liberal Supreme Court candidate wins a key Wisconsin election as billionaires invest heavily, and a voter referendum result that could keep one conservative priority safe. We'll be right back.
Hi, friends. Richard Karn here. Now, I'm known as the guy who can fix just about anything, but the technology in most appliances requires very special training to fix. My point is, even I know when I've met my match, and that's why my family has Choice Home Warranty. So we won't get stuck with high-priced repairs.
Choice Home Warranty covers over 25 major home systems and appliances. That's your AC, heating, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and so much more.
Imagine for less than a cup of coffee a day, Choice Home Warranty can help protect you from expensive major system and appliance breakdowns that your homeowner's insurance doesn't cover. But you have to call now before it's too late.
Every homeowner should have Choice Home Warranty. Your homeowner's insurance is not going to cover your appliances.
Washing machine, dryer, refrigerator, air condition. If I had any issues arise, they were able to take care of it immediately.
Now, homeowner's insurance won't protect you when your home's major systems and appliances break down due to normal wear and tear. But Choice Home Warranty will. They can help cover repairs and replacements.
Choice Home Warranty is the best warranty we've ever used. It would save you so much money in the long run.
Hey, I'm not the only one raving about Choice Home Warranty. They were named a Best Home Warranty Company and Best Claim Service by U.S. News 360 Reviews.
Call Choice Home Warranty now and get access to a nationwide network of over 15,000 technicians and the latest appointment setting technology so you'll know when they're on their way.
If I have an issue with an appliance or something around the house, I just call up Choice Home Warranty and I don't have to worry about that.
So, do what this old DIYer did and call Choice Home Warranty now before something breaks down. Tell them I sent you and get your first month free.
Call Choice Home Warranty before it's too late and get protection for your heating, AC, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and more. Call for your free quote today. Call in the next 5 minutes and get your first month free. 800-360-6782. 800-360-6782.
I hear every day about the products you all wish MyPillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard MyPillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
Welcome back to Newsroom. A liberal court in Wisconsin remains liberal. The most expensive judicial contest in U.S. history, which attracted the interest of national figures such as Elon Musk and George Soros, has ended with a victory for liberal candidate Susan Crawford. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports on the election and a voter ID referendum.
Justice Susan Crawford handily defeated former Republican Attorney General Brad Schimmel in Wisconsin's Supreme Court election on Tuesday.
And to Anne, although no one can truly fill your shoes, I am incredibly honored to succeed you on the Wisconsin Supreme Court.
Conservatives viewed the race as a battle for the future of the state and the country.
The numbers aren't gonna turn around. They're too bad, and we're not gonna pull this off. So thank you guys from the bottom of my heart.
Elon Musk warned about the importance of the election on Fox News.
Democrats can gerrymander Wisconsin in order to remove 2 House seats from Republican to Democrat.
Musk warned voters Monday that betting markets showed an 85 to 90% chance of a Crawford victory.
We got to pull a rabbit out of the hat next level.
Crawford won with about 54.5% of the vote to Schimmel's 45.5%.
As a little girl growing up in Chippewa Falls, I never could have imagined that I'd be taking on the richest man in the world.
Both candidates received contributions from tens of thousands of donors across all 50 states. Contributions above $20,000 may not be given directly to a political candidate, but donors can contribute larger amounts through state political parties or political action committees. Musk contributed $3 million to Wisconsin's Republican Party. Billionaires George Soros and J.B. Pritzker contributed $2 million and $1.5 million, respectively, to the state's Democratic Party. Musk also handed out 2 $1 million checks to signers of a petition against judicial activism. America PAC, which is associated with Musk, heavily supported Schimmel too. The most recent campaign financial filings show the avalanche of funds enabled spending of $21 million by Crawford's campaign and about $10 million by Schimmel's campaign. More than $81 million was spent by other groups in support of the candidates, according to the Brennan Center for Justice. Though Trump won Wisconsin by 1.7 million votes in the fall election, his support did not translate into momentum for Schimmel. Schimmel trailed in the last poll before the election by 7 percentage points. The court now has what is generally acknowledged to be a 4-3 liberal-leaning majority, which will be maintained as Crawford replaces Justice Ann Walsh Bradley, who retires at the end of July. The court is likely to issue critical rulings on voting rights and election rules ahead of the 2026 midterms and the 2028 presidential race, when the state is expected to remain a central battleground. In other Wisconsin election news, voters have approved a constitutional amendment requiring voter ID, reinforcing a 2011 state law. The measure passed in Tuesday's referendum will make it harder to overturn the rule. Supporters say it protects election integrity, while opponents argue it makes it harder for people to vote. President Trump reacted to the news on Truth Social, calling it a big win for Republicans. Trump said it should allow the GOP to win Wisconsin for many years to come. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And now heading to Florida, where 2 closely watched elections have just wrapped up as well. Republicans have kept control of Florida's 1st and 6th congressional districts, giving them a leg up in the U.S. House of Representatives. Here's that story.
Republican Randy Fine edged out Democrat Joshua Weil in Florida's 6th Congressional District Tuesday night. It was a special election to replace Michael Waltz, now President Trump's national security advisor. Democrats were hoping the open seat could help them chip away at the GOP's razor-thin House majority. Weil ran an aggressive fundraising campaign, raising nearly $9 million compared with Fine's $500,000. The Democratic National Committee also invested heavily in the race, funding poll watchers and greeters on Election Day. But Fine clinched just over 53% of the vote, solidifying GOP control. In his victory speech, he made mention of the efforts Democrats had made.
And today, as I went from polling place to polling place and met paid poll workers from California and Atlanta and Seattle, I told them I hoped they enjoyed their stay in Florida, and I wish them safe travels home. Because this is Trump country.
Still, the margin was thin for the normally heavily Republican district. Mike Waltz won the same seat in November by nearly 30 percentage points. Fine beat Weil by a margin of 14 points, but he denied claims he had underperformed.
It's a special election. You have to look at the turnout. I mean, there were twice as many people that voted. I don't think you can read much into it. We won by double digits. We're super excited. It was an incredibly powerful victory, given that many of you said I was going to lose over the last week, and clearly we showed that wasn't any risk.
In Florida's 1st district, it was a similar story. Republican Jimmy Patronis won a special election there to replace former Congressman Matt Gaetz. The margin in this race was even closer. When polls closed, Patronis had received over 52% of the vote, while his opponent, Democrat Gay Vallemont, got just under 46%. Here, too, Democrats made a push to flip the seat, raising more than $6 million for Vallemont. That's 6 times more than Patronis raised. But like Fine, Patronis had an endorsement from President Trump. He said in his victory speech, even $6 million cannot overcome one simple Trump post on social media. Fine and Patronis' victories mean the GOP has increased its majority in the House. It now stands at 220 to the Democrats' 213. This will give Republicans more breathing room on key votes.
Employees from the Health and Human Services Department began receiving notices of dismissal yesterday. The overhaul is ultimately expected to result in the layoffs of up to 10,000 people. At the NIH, the cuts coincided with Dr. Jay Bhattacharya's first day as director. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. marked the moment by celebrating Bhattacharya's swearing in alongside new FDA Commissioner Martin McCary. Kennedy declared on social media, quote, "The revolution begins today." Now, Kennedy announced a plan last week to remake the department. The layoffs are expected to shrink Health and Human Services from 82,000 full-time employees to around 62,000. The restructuring aims to merge 28 divisions into just 15. A federal judge has indefinitely blocked layoffs from President Trump's administration. This decision affects thousands of probationary federal workers in 19 states and Washington as well, narrowing a nationwide order issued last month. The ruling by Judge James Bredar replaces an earlier order that required reinstating 11,000 workers. It now expands it to cover 2 more agencies, including the Defense Department. Now, the judge found the administration likely violated federal rules on mass layoffs by failing to provide proper notice. His decision only applies to states that sued, most of which are Democratic-led. The Trump administration has appealed, arguing the firings were lawful. Several federal agencies are giving employees another chance to resign with continued pay, but the workers don't have long to make a decision. In at least 4 agencies, workers are being offered the option to resign, but be paid through the end of September. Depending on the agency, some employees must decide by April 8th, while others have until April 18th. The General Services Administration and the Departments of Agriculture, Defense, and Energy have reopened the controversial deferred resignation program. The original program was offered to about 2 million federal employees who had to accept by mid-February. Roughly 75,000 signed up for that. The Supreme Court today is hearing arguments on whether South Carolina can cut off Medicaid funding to Planned Parenthood. The dispute centers on whether Medicaid patients can sue to ensure access to any qualified provider. A Planned Parenthood affiliate sued after Governor Henry McMaster sought to block its Medicaid funding. Lower courts ruled in its favor. The Supreme Court's decision, expected by June, could set a major precedent. South Carolina outlaws abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy. A federal judge has ordered the Trump administration to temporarily restore legal aid to unaccompanied migrant children. This comes after the administration last month terminated a contract with the Acacia Center for Justice. The group provides legal services to children who are in the country illegally without a parent or guardian. Some of the group's subcontractors sued the Trump administration after the contract was terminated, saying that 26,000 children were at risk of losing their attorneys. The judge in the case granted a temporary restraining order yesterday, reversing the Trump administration's decision while this case continues. And moving on, according to Border Patrol data, March had the lowest southwest border crossings in history. The agency says there were 7,180 crossings last month. Daily apprehensions also fell to about 230 per day. The agency says the previous administration recorded daily encounters of 5,000 per day. These are preliminary numbers. Now, CBP says it will have the finalized report in the coming days. Up next, the U.S. is imposing sanctions on top Hong Kong authorities. That's as Beijing's handpicked Hong Kong government is working to arrest democracy advocates. We'll be discussing what's happening with an expert.
I have never seen a production any better than this, anywhere.
Breathtaking. It is absolutely stunning.
I feel better about the world. I feel uplifted.
Invigorating. It was encouraging, gave me hope.
This has just been therapy for the soul.
It's a must-see. Must-see.
Make sure you see it. Make sure you see it.
Coming to Lincoln Center, March 26th through April 13th. Shenyun.com.
Looking to refresh the style in your home? Here at Mathis Home, we can help you find exactly what you need during our spring style event. Whether you're looking for rustic farmhouse, classic, or modern and eclectic, we have all the latest looks that will leave your home feeling brand new. Whatever your style, we know that we can help you find it at the lowest price. Because not only do we want you to feel good in your home, we know that to earn your business, our prices have to be the best. So come to the spring style event at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
Say goodbye to harsh, bitter coffee and hello to a delicious, smooth brew. With specialty quality beans, expertly roasted in-house, you'll taste the difference with every sip. Fermented with a blend of 50 enzymes, Days Coffee delivers a rich brew like no other. Made with the highest grade specialty beans available, you're sure to taste the difference. Elevate your morning with Days Enzyme Fermented Coffee.
Kids love it. Parents trust it. Obviously. Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Ganjiang Campus courses led by expert educators. This is spectacular. Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more. Wow. All while having fun. Perfect. Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
Ethan was shot in the head in his best friend's house with an unsecured gun. The father, the gun owner, he stored his 3 guns and bullets in a shoebox. That has to be the most horrific experience that a human could ever have.
Even the mighty might not see it coming. It's prediabetes, and it captures 1 in 3 adults. But you can escape. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Be your own hero.
The U.S. is sanctioning Hong Kong officials for carrying out the orders of the Chinese regime. That includes putting bounties on the heads of democracy advocates, including some based here in the U.S. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley reports.
The State Department is sanctioning 6 people related to the Chinese Communist Party's transnational repression campaign. Chinese and Hong Kong authorities have put several bounties to arrest democracy activists in the U.S. and around the world. These sanctions target high-level officials in Hong Kong's government, which is now closely tied to the Chinese regime. The sanctions mean that all U.S. property held by these individuals will be inaccessible to them. These sanctions follow the release of the Hong Kong Policy Act report, which says that China has undermined the rule of law in Hong Kong with its fairly new so-called national security law, which essentially silences all political dissent in Hong Kong. Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying that these sanctions are a response to undermining Hong Kong's autonomy, depriving Hong Kongers of freedoms, and in being involved in acts of transnational repression targeting activists over on U.S. soil. Meanwhile, Secretary Rubio will be in Brussels later this week, raising concerns of the Chinese regime's increasing aggression to its neighbors in the Pacific.
Secretary Rubio will also discuss the shared threat of China to the Euro-Atlantic and Indo-Pacific alliances at a NATO session with representatives of the Indo-Pacific partners.
He will also discuss assistance to Ukraine and how allies other than the U.S. need to contribute more to the alliance. President Trump has long said that NATO countries are taking advantage of the U.S., who's paying more than others. NATO requires its members to contribute at least 2% to its GDP to defense. Now, a majority of them are now meeting this bare minimum requirement, but when this benchmark was made in 2014, there were only 3 countries meeting this requirement. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Joining us now for further discussion on this matter is Benedict Rogers, co-founder of Hong Kong Watch and co-founder and deputy chair of the UK Conservative Party Human Rights Commission. Benedict, thank you so much for being here today. Now, we know that these 6 individuals who have been targeted by these sanctions, what kind of a message does that send to Beijing and Hong Kong when we look at these 6 individuals?
I think it sends an extremely strong message, and I very warmly welcome these sanctions. Among the individuals that have been sanctioned are the Secretary for Justice in the Hong Kong government, senior figures in the Hong Kong police force, and also senior figures in the Committee for Safeguarding National Security, which is the body that oversees the implementation of the extremely draconian national security law. And I think sanctioning such individuals sends a very strong message, and it's long overdue, but I'm glad it's happened now.
Benedict, go deeper here, because as you say, I mean, this national security law, it still remains in effect. So these sanctions, they may not necessarily prevent future arrests made under it. So in that case, what kind of an impact do you think this will have on government governance in Hong Kong?
Well, I think it will have an impact because the national security law was imposed on Hong Kong in 2020. There was a further domestic security law introduced last year. And as you said in your report, not only has that resulted in a severe crackdown in Hong Kong, it's also resulted in the rise of transnational repression and the Hong Kong and Beijing authorities being increasingly aggressive towards dissidents, exiles, critics overseas. 19 exiled Hong Kongers have been threatened, have had bounties, arrest warrants put on them. And even far less seriously, but even someone like myself has been threatened with a prison sentence in Hong Kong, even though I'm safe in London. And so I think it's time to send a strong message that this kind of transnational repression is not acceptable. And the effect of these sanctions may well be, I hope, to give Hong Kong officials pause for thought in the future.
And Benedict, it's extremely concerning to see this type of transnational repression. You yourself experienced this. We've seen reports of it happening to individuals both in the UK, in the US, all over the world, really. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, it's involved, as you say, Hong Kongers in the US, in Australia, and in the UK and elsewhere. And recently, it's escalated to an even more serious level. Over the last year or two, it's involved bounties and arrest warrants. But in the last few months, it has involved actual letters going to either the homes of or the neighborhoods of certain key Hong Kong exiled activists, encouraging the neighbors to essentially surrender those activists to the Chinese embassy. It's also involved a campaign of intimidation against some prominent Hong Kong activists in Australia, with some really horrendous threats made there. As I say, to a less serious extent, because I don't have family back in Hong Kong, I don't have assets in Hong Kong. I'm safe and free here in London. But even I have been targeted with threatening letters some years ago to my neighbors, to my home, and as I say, with a threat of a prison sentence in Hong Kong as well. So this kind of intimidation, whether it's against diaspora communities or foreign critics, is something we just should not tolerate in our democratic nations.
And I'm sorry you had to experience that, Benedict. I want to ask you about what Secretary of State Rubio said about these actions demonstrating this current administration's commitment to holding people accountable for their actions. Do you think that Hong Kongers should see this as a sign of hope for the future autonomy of Hong Kong?
I think it's certainly a sign of hope that, as Secretary Rubio has said, Hong Kong officials responsible for or complicit with these kind of abuses will be held accountable. And it also sends a strong warning to the business community that Hong Kong is not the vibrant, global, safe business environment that it used to be. And that, I think, has implications that business people and investors in Hong Kong ought to take seriously. I don't expect sanctions alone to suddenly herald autonomy for Hong Kong. Autonomy for Hong Kong was undone several years ago, and it will take much bigger change to restore it and to bring back Hong Kong's freedoms. But it is part of the effort to hold the tyrants of Beijing and their quislings in Hong Kong accountable. And if we keep up the pressure, and crucially, I think these US sanctions need to be matched by sanctions from other countries, particularly my own country. Just today, 10 Hong Kong activists, together with Hong Kong Watch, have called on the British Foreign Secretary to issue sanctions. And action by the United Kingdom, given our colonial history with Hong Kong, is long overdue.
So, Benedict, what further steps do you think we could or should see coming from the Trump administration or your own government?
Well, from the Trump administration, I certainly hope there will be continued sanctions. They've announced these sanctions against 6 officials, but obviously there are many other officials that potentially could be justifiable targets. And from the British government, we haven't yet sanctioned any Hong Kong official. And given that it's now coming up for 5 years since the imposition of the national security law and the total dismantling of Hong Kong's freedoms, which were promised in an agreement with the UK, the Sino-British Joint Declaration, it's high time that the UK joined the US in implementing sanctions, and we'll certainly be continuing to press the British government for that.
Benedict, last question for you here. Of course, as we've seen and as you've mentioned, right, freedom of press, it's seriously diminished in recent years in Hong Kong. So just looking ahead, what would it really take to restore autonomy to Hong Kong?
I think ultimately we have to be realistic. I'm always hopeful. I think we must keep up hope in this struggle. But realistically, it's going to require fundamental change in Beijing to result in positive change in Hong Kong. All of the crackdown that we've seen in Hong Kong in recent years, yes, has been facilitated by Hong Kong officials, but it's been at the direction of Beijing. So until we see change in Beijing and in the whole of China, we won't see a free Hong Kong.
Very important point to make there, Benedict. Rogers, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
Moving on, the deadline for the sale of Panama ports and dozens of worldwide ports arrives today, with no certainty that the sale will actually go through. The Chinese Communist regime has relentlessly criticized Hong Kong conglomerate CK Hutchison for offering up its Panama ports for sale to the U.S. firm BlackRock since the deal was first announced. Now, CK Hutchison controls 2 strategic facilities on both ends of the Panama Canal. The deal would also give BlackRock control of ports in nearly 24 other countries for a total of $22.8 billion. But CK Hutchinson would still control the ports it owns in Hong Kong and mainland China. The Chinese regime has called the sale unpatriotic and has tried to stifle it. President Trump sees control of the Panama Canal as a matter of national security and has not ruled out the use of force to reclaim it. The death toll from last Friday's massive earthquake in Burma has surpassed 3,000. The 7.7 magnitude quake toppled thousands of buildings, collapsing bridges and splitting roads. Burma's state media reported more than 4,600 people were injured. The number of casualties is expected to rise. Most of the reports so far have come from Mandalay, Burma's second largest city, which was near the epicenter of the earthquake. The United Nations said there were more than 28 million people in the 6 regions affected by the disaster. The Southeast Asian nation has been in a civil war since the military ousted the elected government back in 2021. Now, according to the United Nations, more than 3 million people have been displaced from their homes since then. And civil war and instability in Burma have highlighted the challenge of delivering aid to survivors of Friday's devastating earthquake. The nation's military junta said its troops fired warning shots at a Chinese Red Cross aid convoy last night amid recovery efforts. A junta spokesperson said the Chinese Red Cross had not informed authorities it was in the conflict zone. The military junta fired shots after the vehicle allegedly failed to stop. The military has struggled to govern Burma following its 2021 coup. The conflict has battered the country's economy and reduced basic services and health care. Rebels have accused the military of conducting airstrikes even after the earthquake. The military has dismissed accusations that it has committed widespread atrocities. NATO's Secretary General says NATO allies have pledged more than $20 billion in aid to Ukraine. This comes ahead of a meeting covering the war with Russia, as well as key strategies to improve Europe's defense capabilities. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson reports.
Foreign ministers from nations in the NATO alliance are due to meet in Brussels on Thursday and Friday. Secretary General Mark Rutte said Ukraine is at the top of the agenda.
NATO allies continue our support to Ukraine. In the first 3 months of this year, allies have already pledged more than 20 billion euros in security assistance for 2025.
He said they will continue to coordinate security assistance and training for Ukraine. The war in Ukraine has been ongoing for over 3 years. He commended President Trump's moves to break the deadlock on peace deal negotiations.
And I fully support the efforts undertaken by the US to bring this terrible war to a just and lasting end.
And added that he supports France, Britain and other nations in their plans to offer Ukraine security guarantees in a post-war future. That said, he warned the threat from Russia remains.
And Russia continues to work closely with China, Iran and North Korea in ways that not only harm Ukraine, but pose risks across the alliance and around the world.
He said these and other actors are working to destabilize Western societies through sabotage, cyber attacks and assassination attempts. The goal of the meeting, Rutte said, is to ensure ministers share a vision for a stronger, fairer and more lethal NATO. In the wake of Trump's call for NATO nations to increase defense spending, Rutte said many allies have been stepping up spending in ways not seen in decades. Asked about the threat of war with China, Rutte said it's understandable that the United States wants to focus more on the Indo-Pacific.
And it is only logical for the Europeans to step up even more.
Key parts of this, he said, will be developing Europe's internal markets, such as homegrown defense industrial production. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, London.
When we come back, Hollywood is mourning the loss of the Top Gun and Batman star Val Kilmer, who has died at the age of 65. His daughter says he had been suffering from pneumonia. That and more after the break.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
If joint pain from aging is slowing you down, Omega XL can help you get back in the saddle, just like it did for John Walsh.
Today I'm here at my ranch exercising some of my polo ponies. Got to be really fit to ride these horses. So as you get older, it gets tougher. I was starting to suffer some of that business, and then I ran into somebody who said, look, you should try Omega XL, and look what it's done. I feel better than I felt in the last 30 years.
I'm Reve Walsh. I'm John Walsh's wife. I ride fox hunters, and sometimes I'm in the saddle for 3-5 hours at a time. A lot of work out here.
I wouldn't have been able to do this. Muck a stall, throw hay, do all the things that needs to be done on a ranch a couple years ago. But Omega XL gave me the ability to get back in the saddle. It works great.
Once you try it, you don't want to be without it. Makes a huge difference.
It does. Take it every single day, and you know, there's a benefit. It's made you a lot nicer to me.
If you've been living with pain, it's time to get this special offer, the Omega XL, the joint health supplement that millions have trusted for more than 20 years. Omega XL, it's sourced from the green-lipped mussel, exclusively found in the pristine waters of New Zealand, some of the cleanest waters on Earth. Omega XL, it's natural, drug-free, and it's backed by more than 40 years of clinical research that show it really works. Try Omega XL today. Pick up your phone and call the number at the bottom of your screen right now for a special offer. Buy one, get two free. 2 bottles of Omega XL plus Vitamin XL D3, a value of more than $100. But call today and you pay only $39.95. That's a savings of more than 60%. Plus, it's backed by our 60-day money-back guarantee.
Try it. You got nothing to lose.
Call or go online right now to get this special offer. 2 bottles of Omega XL plus Vitamin XL D3 for only $39.95. Call now.
Thanks for staying with us. Some sad news now coming out of Hollywood. Top Gun and Batman Forever star Val Kilmer has died at the age of 65. In a statement to the New York Times, Kilmer's daughter said the actor died yesterday. She said the cause of his death was pneumonia. Kilmer was diagnosed with throat cancer back in 2014. His cancer had left him struggling to speak. He had chemotherapy treatment and tracheotomies, making it difficult to breathe and permanently impacting his voice. Kilmer began his acting career on the stage and then transitioned to film, starring in comedies and spoofs. But his breakout role was Iceman in the 1986 Top Gun film. Some of his other big roles included Batman in the 1995 Batman Forever movie and Jim Morrison in Oliver Stone's The Doors. His final film was 2023's Top Gun Maverick, where he reprised his role as Iceman. He is survived by their 2 children, Mercedes and Jack. New York City's composting fines are now in effect. Property owners already separate recyclables like plastic, glass, and paper from waste. And as of yesterday, they must also separate compostable items like banana peels, bones, and grass clippings. If they don't, they could face fines starting at $25. NTD's Chris Beers reports on the penalties for failing to separate organic waste in the Big Apple.
Starting April 1st, property owners in New York City will be required to separate compostable materials from recyclables on Recycling Day. Fines for buildings with 1 to 8 units start at $25. Fines for buildings with 9 or more units start at $100.
If tenants do not sort their own organic waste, they're putting the burden on the property owner or the building superintendent to do that on their behalf. So it would entail us opening trash bags, removing wet organic waste.
Compostable waste includes yard waste, food scraps, and food-soiled paper. For example, meat, bones, dairy, and pizza boxes are accepted.
There's no way for us to know if a tenant is going to do it on their own. There's no way for us to enforce it either. And the city has not done a great job in rolling out some sort of education to let the 8 million people that live here in New York City know that this is something that they have to do now.
New York City's composting program went into effect citywide in October, but fines weren't levied until now. The city turns the organic waste it collects into compost, nutrient-rich organic material used to improve soil. New Yorkers can pick up compost for free at distribution events or permanent sites. However, implementing a program like this does come with challenges.
If you're facing a typical New York City summer and it's 90 plus degrees and your compost bin sitting in the sun, it doesn't take long for it to create an odor that you don't appreciate. It's a key consideration from a municipal standpoint is how do we make sure that we're not solving one problem to create another problem.
New York City's compost program will affect the city government, landlords, renters, and single-family property owners.
I live in a condo building in Brooklyn, and just the other day on one of our shared message boards, somebody wrote that this was going into effect or is now in effect, and we need to start complying or we were going to get fined. So I have heard about it. I think it's a great thing.
Do you compost?
I do not compost.
Were you aware of this program?
I am not aware of this program.
I think it's great. I think we should do it. I'm all for less trash.
Acting New York City Sanitation Commissioner Javier Lohan says city supervisors check all the materials and all the street segments to ensure property owners comply with the new rule. To the home chef trying to comply with the program, Lohan says if you grow it and cook it, you can throw it. Chris Beers, NTD News.
Coming up, the deadline for the sale of key parts of the Panama Canal from a Hong Kong firm to a U.S. one arrives today, still with no certainty that the sale will actually go through. That and more in the next hour. Don't go anywhere.
I hear every day about the products you all wish MyPillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard MyPillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. You may know me from my many years on television. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event. I felt this slight pressure on my chest, just slight. I thought, oh, it's nothing, it'll go away. I didn't get it. I did not get it. A few days later, while shopping at a boutique, that pressure returned, much stronger. It felt like an elephant pressing on my chest. I had a 90% blockage in my main artery and a 75% blockage in the adjacent artery. I was rushed into surgery where I received 2 stents in my arteries. Stents developed through research funded by the American Heart Association. Those stents saved my life. That's why I'm in front of you today, asking you to join me in supporting the American Heart Association by becoming a monthly donor. Call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough. Get the next person trained in CPR, the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. I'm so grateful to the American Heart Association. Their research helped save my life. I can enjoy life with my children, my grandchildren, and my friends. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, and your support now can help save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special T-shirt that you can wear to show that you are helping save lives. Please, listen to your heart. The only reason I'm here today is because I did. So please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now. Join me as a monthly donor today and help save even more lives. Thank you.
NTD News, the fastest growing independent news source in America, bringing you breaking news from around the world. Expert analysis, investigative reporting, and original award-winning documentaries. We're known for our uncensored China coverage you won't find anywhere else. We cover the stories that affect you and shape our world without the political noise. We report from the heart with you in mind. Watch us right here on NTD News.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Fiona G. President Donald Trump is holding a Make America Wealthy Again event in the Rose Garden at the White House this afternoon, introducing global tariffs on what he calls Liberation Day. House and Senate Democrats react to Trump's Liberation Day tariffs. NTD's Luis Martinez has more from the U.S. Capitol. Mayor Eric Adams today saying he did nothing wrong as a federal judge permanently dismisses his corruption case. Our legal correspondent has the details. Hunter Biden agrees to give up his license to practice law in Washington, D.C. due to his criminal record. A liberal win in Wisconsin's Supreme Court. A GOP win, meanwhile, in Florida's special elections. What could all of this mean for the 2026 midterms? We'll be asking analysts. The deadline for the sale of key parts of the Panama Canal from a Hong Kong firm to a U.S. firm arrives today, still with no certainty that the sale will actually go through. The race to succeed Governor Gavin Newsom is getting more crowded. Xavier Becerra has officially announced his candidacy for California governor.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
We start this hour off with a look at Capitol Hill. Senate Democrats are trying to reverse President Trump's fentanyl emergency tariffs on Canada, while House Democrats have different reactions to the administration's so-called Liberation Day. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez reports.
It's estimated that the average American family will pay more than $5,000 out of their pocket to pay for these tariffs. That these tariffs will cost them $5,000 as the prices of everything goes up.
Senate Democrats are pushing to vote on a resolution that would reverse the tariffs that Trump levied on Canada using the fentanyl emergency declaration. Republican Senator Rand Paul is an original co-sponsor of the resolution, and Senate Democrats hope to put Republicans on the record on tariffs.
Canadian tariffs are not the answer to the solution, because the fentanyl problem is not primarily a Canadian problem. But this is not about fentanyl. It's about tariffs. It's about a national sales tax on American families.
President Trump has already said he would not sign the resolution if it reached his desk, and House Democrats are divided over tariffs.
America is too expensive. Donald Trump and House Republicans aren't doing anything about the affordability crisis in the United States of America.
The auto workers are concerned about, or unions in general, potential increased costs. But quite frankly, they're not unhappy to see someone doing something about trade, bringing those jobs home, bringing the supply chains back home.
House Republicans have brushed off criticism against Trump tariff policies and have remained united.
Let's go back to his first administration. There was the same type of talk about tariffs. The Biden administration didn't change virtually anything associated with the tariff policy of Donald Trump. The president is making sure is that we have manufacturing in our country, that we actually have domestic supplies in our country, that people actually have high-paying jobs, as opposed to just onshoring everything from Asia, which, if you go back to COVID-19, was not in the best interest of the United States.
On a Truth Social post, President Trump called out by name 4 Republican senators who have shown opposition to his tariff plans by saying that Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, Susan Collins of Maine, and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and Rand Paul of also Kentucky will hopefully get on the Republican bandwagon for a change and fight the Democrats' wild and flagrant push to not penalize Canada. It's important to note that the Senate is expected to vote on a new budget resolution and instructions for reconciliation bill this week. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
The historic corruption case against New York City Mayor Eric Adams has been dismissed with prejudice. This means the case cannot be brought back again. NTD's legal correspondent Arlene Richards has more on why the court declined to dismiss it the way the Justice Department requested.
District Court Judge Dale Ho on Wednesday issued a lengthy opinion permanently dismissing a 5-count indictment against Mayor Eric Adams. The indictment, which included bribery and fraud, was brought last September. Adams had pleaded not guilty.
I know I am innocent.
Judge Ho declined to dismiss the case without prejudice as requested by the Trump administration. He said in his order, DOJ does not seek to end this case once and for all. Rather, its request, if granted, would leave Mayor Adams under the specter of re-indictment at essentially any time, and for essentially any reason. The court declines in its limited discretion under Rule 48A to endorse that outcome. Mayor Adams responded to the dismissal.
Today finally marks the end of this chapter. Let me be clear. As I've said all along, this case should have never been brought. And I did nothing wrong.
Judge Ho said that under the Justice Department's request, the mayor's freedom seemed to depend on him carrying out the Trump administration's immigration policies. The Justice Department had argued that continuing the proceedings would interfere with the mayor's ability to govern. They said it could threaten federal immigration policies. On Monday, Adams' attorney submitted a letter alerting the judge that his petition for candidacy for mayor was due on Thursday and asked the court to promptly reach a decision. Adams faces a large field of challengers, including former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who holds a wide lead, and several Democrats. The incumbent mayor's challengers have been saying New Yorkers can no longer trust him to prioritize their interests, arguing that he's too indebted to Trump. Adams has said he will always put this city first. Judge Ho's decision does not address the merits of the charges. He said his decision is not about whether Mayor Adams is innocent or guilty. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
The deadline for the sale of Panama ports and dozens of worldwide ports arrives today, and there's no certainty that the sale will actually go through. The Chinese Communist regime has relentlessly criticized Hong Kong conglomerate CK Hutchison for offering up its Panama ports for sale to U.S. firm BlackRock since the deal was first announced. CK Hutchison controls 2 strategic facilities on both ends of the Panama Canal. The deal would also give BlackRock control of ports in nearly 24 countries for a total of $22.8 billion. But CK Hutchison would still control the ports it owns in Hong Kong and mainland China. The Chinese regime has called the sale unpatriotic and has tried to stifle it. President Trump sees control of the Panama Canal as a matter of national security and has not ruled out the use of force to reclaim it. And joining us now to further discuss this matter is Virginia Allen, senior news producer and podcast host of The Daily Signal. Virginia, thank you so much for coming on today.
Great to be with you.
Now, we've heard that China's top market regulator has effectively prevented this deal from going through in the expected time frame by announcing that investigation into the deal. So what is China up to here? Could it prevent the deal from actually closing, or is it just trying to buy some time?
Well, it's probably both, but with enough political pressure, it probably could. We know that ultimately Hong Kong is subject to the Communist Party of China, and China has made it very clear that they are not in favor of this deal. They want to maintain control of those ports. The Panama Canal is one of the most critical shipping passages in the entire world. And whoever controls the Panama Canal arguably controls America's access really to the entire world. And so for President Trump and for all Americans, this is a key national security issue. And I was actually down in Panama just about 2 weeks ago, and I had the opportunity to tour the canal. It's an incredible just feat of human engineering that has been built and that the U.S. built, but ultimately obviously handed over to the Panamanians to operate. And Panama is doing a great job operating that canal. But there is grave concern. If China was able to in any way block or prevent passage through that canal, that would create great harm to the United States, not only economically, but from a security perspective. And, not only is China trying to keep control Hong Kong, but by way China control of those ports, but we also know that the Chinese are in the process of working on a contract that would build a fourth bridge over the Panama Canal, as well as a tunnel that would send a subway underneath the canal. So China is very clear, and their actions really point towards their interest in this region, and that should be of grave concern to all Americans.
Virginia, go deeper here for us. How solid of a foothold does China currently have when it comes to the canal and its operations?
I asked one of the employees, one of the vice presidents who works at the canal, that very question. And I said, are any Chinese working at the canal? And he was very clear. He said no. He said there's about 8 non-Panamanians who work at the canal, a few Americans, a Colombian, and a Chilean. There are no Chinese physically operating the canal among their 8,500 employees. However, their infrastructure projects are very apparent, and that really demonstrates their interest in that region. The Chinese have been in Panama since the mid-1800s. They have a lot of history in that region. When I was down there, we drove by a very active and busy Chinese cultural center. The history and the richness of the Chinese people in Panama is very, very prevalent. And, in many ways, that's a beautiful thing. The element, though, that Panamanians and Americans need to be weary of is that influence specifically of the Chinese Communist Party. And when I was down there, I spoke with Chuck Holton. He's a war correspondent. He lives in Panama. He does work for Newsmax as well as for CBN. And he told me that his greatest concern is that Chinese technology could potentially hack into the controls that control the Panama Canal, because it is all digital. It's all controlled electronically. And if China was able to do that and shut the canal down, let's say in the instance of a conflict in the Indo-Pacific, since U.S. military ships move through the canal in order to get our ships from the Atlantic to the Pacific, that could cause a major issue in the case of any sort of conflict with China that was taking place in the Pacific Ocean. So again, a major national security concern for the United States to ensure that we always have access to the Panama Canal.
Certainly incredibly concerning. I want to look back for a second, Virginia, at the history of this canal, because it was originally constructed by the U.S. and it really made a significant difference in moving goods at much shorter transit times since the time it was constructed. Now, when it was handed over to the Panama Canal, that was back in 1999, what changes exactly did the U.S. see in 1999 when it lost control of the canal?
That's right. So we fully handed over that control. It was under President Jimmy Carter in the 1970s that we made that agreement. That treaty was signed between the U.S. and Panama. And the reason for that is that the Panamanians were really growing in frustration, I would say, with America. And they saw the U.S. control of the canal as an infringement on their sovereignty. But many have been highly critical of President Jimmy Carter, including Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts, who I was on that trip with down in Panama and at the canal. And he had the opportunity to actually meet with the president of Panama while we were down there and spoke with him about this threat of China. But that decision really surrendered, obviously, that full control to Panama, which again, in some ways, leaves that decision out of our hands as far as what role China does have in that region. Of course, Americans, President Trump, are speaking with authorities, speaking with the president of Panama and expressing, hey, you do need to be really careful about the relationship and the ties that are formed with China. You need to be very leery of giving China access to data related to the canal, what's flowing through that canal, because that's not only a national security threat to the United States, but really to the entire world, because that's such a critical through line. So moving forward, we saw that handoff, and it has been smooth. Like I said, the Panamanians, they do a great job of controlling that canal. At the same time, we need to ensure that it is always Panama and Panama alone controlling that canal, and that they continue to have the full support of the United States to protect that canal, come what may.
Virginia, last thing before we go here, based off of everything that you've said so far, back to that deal between BlackRock and CK Hutchinson, do you think U.S. control of those ports in that deal will be enough for the Trump administration?
Likely not. It's possible. It's certainly possible. But, Trump has said publicly that he would like the U.S. to have a more active role in operating the canal. And now you ask Panamanians about that, and they're very clear that they have no intention of, giving up any control of the Panama Canal to the United States. So that could remain and become a source of tension. But, it was interesting when I was down in Panama, I had a great conversation with Mike Gonzalez of the Heritage Foundation. He was on that trip. He actually was a reporter years and years ago, back in the 1980s in Panama, and he knows he has had the opportunity, to meet with Trump, and he's had the opportunity to meet with the president of Panama, Molino. And Mike said, in his estimation, both President Molino of Panama and Trump would probably get along really well and probably would have a great meeting if they could get in the same room and talk, because they're both very strong leaders. They're both very patriotic men. They both love their countries. They love their families, and they want what is best for their country. And I think that disconnect is really coming in for Panamanians, maybe not fully understanding just how significant a threat China really is. And at the end of the day, that's the message that Trump wants Panama to understand, is that they need to be prepared and fully capable of defending against China. And if they're not capable of that, I think that's where the president thinks, how can the U.S. step in and ensure that that canal always remains accessible and safe for commercial shipping and the world's economy, and of course also for national security interests.
All right, Virginia Allen, thank you so much for your insight today.
Thank you so much.
Coming up next, the Supreme Court sides with the FDA in a case about flavored vaping products, and Hunter Biden has given up his license to practice law in Washington, D.C. NATO allies prepare for Ukraine talks, and will discuss strategies to improve Europe's defense capabilities. This as Secretary General Rutte says NATO has pledged over $20 billion to Ukraine. Find out more after this break.
Hi friends, Richard Karn here. Now I'm known as the guy who can fix just about anything, but the technology in most appliances requires very special training to fix. My point is, even I know when I've met my match, and that's why my family has Choice Home Warranty. So we won't get stuck with high-priced repairs.
Choice Home Warranty covers over 25 major home systems and appliances. That's your AC, heating, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and so much more.
Imagine for less than a cup of coffee a day, Choice Home Warranty can help protect you from expensive major system and appliance breakdowns that your homeowner's insurance doesn't cover. But you have to call now before it's too late.
Every homeowner should have Choice Home Warranty. Your homeowner's insurance is not going to cover your appliances.
Washing machine, dryer, refrigerator, air condition. If I had any issues arise, they were able to take care of it immediately.
Now, homeowner's insurance won't protect you when your home's major systems and appliances break down due to normal wear and tear. But Choice Home Warranty will. They can help cover repairs and replacements.
Choice Home Warranty is the best warranty we've ever used. It would save you so much money in the long run.
Hey, I'm not the only one raving about Choice Home Warranty. They were named a Best Home Warranty Company and Best Claim Service by U.S. News 360 Reviews.
Call Choice Home Warranty now and get access to a nationwide network of over 15,000 technicians and the latest appointment setting technology so you'll know when they're on their way.
If I have an issue with an appliance or something around the house, I just call up Choice Home Warranty and I don't have to worry about that.
So, Do what this old DIYer did and call Choice Home Warranty now before something breaks down. Tell them I sent you and get your first month free.
Call Choice Home Warranty before it's too late and get protection for your heating, AC, plumbing, kitchen, and laundry appliances, and more. Call for your free quote today. Call in the next 5 minutes and get your first month free. 800-360-6782. 800-360-6782.
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that I would never be able to get over it and that my kids wouldn't have a father. I overdosed on heroin and I lived. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. For the longest time, fear held me back from ultimately being who I wanted to. I found the fatherhood program, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. My desire to change had finally outweighed my desire to stay the same. I felt powerless for so much of my life that it's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. For the first time, I finally feel like I'm exactly where I should be, where I want to be.
Thanks for staying with us. The Supreme Court today upholding the FDA's block on access to flavored vaping products. In a unanimous decision, the court agreed that flavors like pink lemonade and Rainbow Road were geared toward minors. The FDA reports that 19% of high school students and 4.7% of middle school students vaped in 2020, a far higher share than students who smoked. It's a partial win for the FDA as the court sent the case down to a lower court for further review. Also, the vaping companies are allowed to reapply to the FDA for approval of their products. Meanwhile, Hunter Biden has given up his license to practice law in Washington, D.C. due to his criminal record. By agreeing with a disciplinary board's disbarment recommendation, Hunter avoids lengthy proceedings. Those proceedings would have determined whether his 2 prior criminal cases should cause him to lose his law license. He was convicted of owning a gun while illegally using drugs, and he pleaded guilty to tax evasion. His father, former President Joe Biden, pardoned him of all crimes. The disbarment won't become final until after a D.C. Court of Appeals approves it. Lawmakers are expressing concern that the Chinese regime's cyber attacks against U.S. telecommunications companies like AT&T and Verizon could lead to even more serious breaches. On Capitol Hill today, a House committee examines the potential consequences if the U.S. does not stand up to China's cyber aggression. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley reports.
The Chinese Communist Party and their military intelligence apparatus are already in a footing that we would describe as a wartime footing. They use language to try and communicate to us that they are not in that footing, and they use that language deliberately to deceive us and to make us think, oh, everything's okay, we can just sort of be friends. They do this while hacking us blatantly, while then denying when they get confronted.
Recent cyber attacks from China targeting the U.S. are becoming an increasing threat. The House Oversight's Military and Foreign Affairs Subcommittee probed the impact of the recent Salt Typhoon attacks. Now, this was a Chinese Communist Party operation to spy on calls and text messages of users of AT&T and Verizon. Now, this operation is believed to have targeted President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance while they were on the campaign trail and other U.S. government officials.
They were able to intercept real-time calls and messaging data from over 1 million users. Critically, these attacks focused on gathering intelligence from high-value government and political figures.
I would say Salt Typhoon is one of the worst breaches our country has ever faced in our telecom infrastructure, and we're still uncovering the full breadth and scope of its attacks. And this work to protect our telecom infrastructure is urgent, and it's bipartisan, and it must be a national priority.
One panelist says that these attacks occurred because the U.S. requires these companies to have a backdoor into their systems so that law enforcement can access their phone data, but this has allowed U.S. adversaries to access people's calls and texts.
Adding mandated backdoors into the equation essentially, preloads the bugs. We don't even have to find them. We know they're there already.
And these espionage hacks may only be the beginning.
It's as if we were driving on a road hitting a bunch of potholes, and then you ask us to come and talk about the potholes we don't want to ignore the potholes, but it's scarier when there's gigantic sinkholes ahead of us. And I think we'll look back on Salt Typhoon as perhaps child's play.
Yeah, what do you think would happen if the CCP or one of our adversaries were to take down our energy grid?
I think it would sow incredible chaos. I think it would be damaging to almost every American in the first and in the second order, given the food supply chains that we use to eat every day, the energy required to purify water, to process sewage, et cetera.
Meanwhile, many House Democrats brought up security concerns about the recently leaked signal chat from members of the Trump administration discussing an attack against terrorists in Yemen.
It is pointless for us to sit in this committee and try to grapple with the real issue of Salt Typhoon and other threats to our communication systems if the people at the top don't take it seriously.
The panel suggests rebuilding cyber infrastructure to make it more secure and changing policies to prevent backdoor access to telecommunications. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
6 months into the job, Boeing CEO Kelly Ortberg testified today at a Senate hearing. With trust in Boeing on the line after an investigation into their door plug failure last year exposed 4 required bolts were missing, Ortberg laid out steps the company has taken to improve safety, citing workforce retraining and safety risk assessments.
Can travelers trust Boeing?
Safely take off and land every 2 seconds of the day. And it's critically important that we rebuild trust. And the only way we're going to do that is by building high-quality airplanes, having the metrics out of our quality system that show that we're making improvements.
Mr. Ortberg, you joined Boeing more than 7 months after the door plug incident. What went wrong with the door plug? And what specifically has Boeing done to correct this safety lapse?
Senator, first of all, it's unacceptable that an aircraft left our factory without that door plug properly installed. And let me just make that perfectly clear. That can never happen again. We identified that the door plug needed to be removed in order to do some repairs on the aircraft that were a result of defects in the fuselage. Those defects come from our fuselage supplier from Spirit Aerosystems in Wichita. So we have made changes to our process, pushed all those defects back up to Spirit Aerosystems, so we're not bringing those into our factories. And so far, sir, we've seen a 56% reduction in defects coming out of Spirit, so that's going to help us significantly. We've also implemented a move-ready safety process, so the airplane cannot move down the production floor if equipment is not installed or rework has not been accomplished. If the aircraft has equipment not installed, we go through a safety risk assessment and look at the risk of moving the aircraft, and we've done that 800 times, and I can tell you of the 800 times, 200 times we've not moved the aircraft. We've held the aircraft because moving it would incur risk to the production system. And we've also seen a 50.
In January 2024, the FAA capped Boeing's production of the 737 MAX at 38 planes per month. Boeing CEO says safety regulations mean they cannot ramp up production until key performance indicators are met. Still, the company sees long-term demand staying strong, projecting nearly 44,000 new airplanes will be needed by 2043. Moving on, NATO Secretary General says NATO allies have pledged more than $20 billion in aid to Ukraine. This comes ahead of a meeting covering the war with Russia, as well as key strategies to improve Europe's defense capabilities. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson reports.
Foreign ministers from nations in the NATO alliance are due to meet in Brussels on Thursday and Friday. Secretary General Mark Rutte said Ukraine is at the top of the agenda.
NATO allies continue our support to Ukraine. In the first 3 months of this year, allies have already pledged more than 20 billion euros in security assistance for 2025.
He said they will continue to coordinate security assistance and training for Ukraine. The war in Ukraine has been ongoing for over 3 years. He commended President Trump's moves to break the deadlock on peace deal negotiations.
And I fully support the efforts undertaken by the US to bring this terrible war to a just and lasting end.
And added that he supports France, Britain and other nations in their plans to offer Ukraine security guarantees in a post-war future. That said, he warned the threat from Russia remains.
And Russia continues to work closely with China, Iran and North Korea in ways that not only harm Ukraine, but pose risks across the alliance and around the world.
He said these and other actors are working to destabilize Western societies through sabotage, cyber attacks and assassination attempts. The goal of the meeting, Rutte said, is to ensure ministers share a vision for a stronger, fairer and more lethal NATO. In the wake of Trump's call for NATO nations to increase defense spending, Rutte said many allies have been stepping up spending in ways not seen in decades. Asked about the threat of war with China, Rutte said it's understandable that the United States wants to focus more on the Indo-Pacific.
And it is only logical for the Europeans to step up even more.
Key parts of this, he said, will be developing Europe's internal markets, such as homegrown defence industrial production. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, London.
The death toll from last Friday's massive earthquake in Burma has surpassed 3,000. The 7.7 magnitude quake toppled thousands of buildings, collapsing bridges and splitting roads. Burma's state media reported more than 4,600 people were injured. The number of casualties is expected to continue to rise. Most of the reports so far have come from Mandalay, Burma's second largest city, which was near the epicenter of the earthquake. The United Nations said there were more than 28 million people in the 6 regions affected by the disaster. The Southeast Asian nation has been in a civil war since the military ousted the elected government back in 2021. According to the United Nations, more than 3 million people have been displaced from their homes since then. Civil war and instability in Burma have highlighted the challenge of delivering aid to survivors of Friday's devastating earthquake. The nation's military junta said its troops fired warning shots at a Chinese Red Cross aid convoy last night and amid recovery efforts. A junta spokesperson said the Chinese Red Cross had not informed authorities that it was in the conflict zone. The military junta fired shots after the vehicle allegedly failed to stop. The military has struggled to govern Burma following its 2021 coup. The conflict has battered the country's economy and reduced basic services and health care. Rebels have accused the military of conducting airstrikes even after the quake. The military has dismissed accusations that it has committed widespread atrocities. When we come back, a liberal win in Wisconsin Supreme Court and a GOP win in Florida's special elections. What could all of this mean for the 2026 midterms? We'll be hearing from analysts after this break.
What has lasted 5,000 years was once almost lost. Now, the world awaits the divine culture's return.
Kids love it. Parents trust it. Obviously. Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Ganjiong Campus courses led by expert educators. This is spectacular. Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more. Wow. All while having fun. Perfect. Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
I didn't ask to lose my mother or to be abused at 5 years old. I didn't ask to be kicked out of my house with nowhere to go. I didn't ask for any of this. But I did ask for help, and Covenant House was there. Thanks to their love and support, and to generous people like you, I got what I needed to take control of my life.
For the young people who didn't ask to be put in unthinkable situations, Covenant House is there providing safety, hope, and a brighter future. Call or go online now. For a gift of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can provide hot meals, safe shelter, medical care, and love to more than 2,000 young people who sleep at a Covenant house every night. 1 in 10 young adults will experience homelessness this year. Your gift can help reach them when they need it most.
I didn't ask for my parents and my family to disown me. I didn't ask to end up in a homeless shelter. The beauty of it all is that I found Covenant House.
The need is overwhelming, but your monthly support will make sure no young person is ever turned away. Call or go online right now to safeplacetosleep.org with your gift of just $19 a month. With your monthly donation, you'll receive this soft, comforting blanket as a reminder of the warmth and safety your gift will provide a young person tonight.
Covenant House really helped me and really helped mold me into the woman I am today. If there's no Covenant House, where would I be today?
Your monthly gift is urgently needed to reach young people in communities like yours who didn't ask to be put in unthinkable situations. Show them they're loved and not alone. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.
Thanks for staying with us. Let's start off now with a look back at the results from yesterday's elections in Wisconsin and Florida. Now, Republicans held onto their House seats from those 2 Florida districts, while Wisconsin maintained its liberal majority in its state Supreme Court. Joining us now to break this all down are Robin Byro, former Obama Regional Campaign Director and Democratic strategist, and Noel Nickpour, Republican strategist and fundraiser. Robin, Noel, thank you both so much for coming on today. Now let's start off with those Florida special elections, right? Both Randy Fine and Jimmy Patronis, they won against their Democratic counterparts by both around 14 points each. Robin, starting off with you, Democrats didn't win these seats this time around, but the margin narrowed significantly compared to November, though some analysts say that these special elections have lower turnout, and it seems Democrats themselves have scored well in participation for them as well. Do you think last night's results were a victory for Democrats?
Yes, because we closed the gap. And Hakeem Jeffries said that these were practically unwinnable seats for Democrats. And we overperformed. That gives us hope. I mean, look, Florida has really not been in play for Democrats for a good decade or so. So, you know, we've closed the gap significantly. I didn't expect to win these, but it gives us hope.
Noel, do Republicans have anything to worry about right now based on those Florida results? Noel? All right. It seems that Noel might be having some connection issues at the moment. Robin, we'll stay on you for a second.
Sure.
Democrats, they poured millions into this race, right? Now, we're seeing Christopher Mitchell, he's a Florida Democratic strategist. He actually told Bloomberg that this was really an unethical use of resources, right? He says the money should have gone towards building Democrats' long-term influence in Florida instead. How do you read that?
That's a good observation, actually. My party's in a state of flux right now, and we're seeing it every day, all day long. So we're searching for our soul, but we needed to give a strong showing on these 2 races in particular. We did that, and look, one of them was a complete outsider to politics. He was just a teacher, for goodness sakes. He was a complete political outsider, and he did really surprisingly well. So, you know, like I said, we've overperformed in these races. I'm more excited, though, about what happened in Wisconsin.
All right, and we'll get to Wisconsin in just a second, Robin. But did you see that Florida election as a referendum, as some were saying, about Trump's current actions in office?
You know, it could be read that way, but I'm more cautiously optimistic about these types of things. I think that this, you know, all politics is local, as they say. What happened here in Florida is has much more to do with what was happening in their specific districts with those specific candidates. So no, I'm not going to ride on a wave of optimism here. I think we still have our work cut out for us as Democrats headed towards the midterms, particularly with fundraising. My party's been hitting the fundraising hard and heavy, and that's going to be a heavy ask because we did so poorly in the November elections, and it's difficult for Democrats right now to lift out their wallets and pocketbooks and come off of more money when we did so abysmally in November. All
right, speaking of money, let's talk about Wisconsin now, because the most costly judicial race in U.S. history. All right, we saw Susan Crawford won the Wisconsin State Supreme Court seat, and this maintains that liberal 4-3 majority. Now, a key worry that we're seeing from conservatives is that there's this possibility of redrawing district maps in favor of Democrats. What do you make of that?
That happens all the time. I mean, gerrymandering is just a thing. I hate it, whether it's done by Democrats or whether it's done by Republicans. I hail to you. I grew up in South Carolina, and that district of Jen Clyburn's district is very much gerrymandered. So I acknowledge that Democrats do that too. But this was an important race because of what was on the docket headed towards the Wisconsin Supreme Court, which is an abortion ruling, which could have national ramifications if Republicans choose to put forth a national ban on abortion. That's why we were looking at. That's why this race had so much money poured into it, because it does have national ramifications should this head to the U.S. Supreme Court. It would set a precedent.
All right, and we're going to get more into detail in the Wisconsin race in just a moment. But Noel, I'm glad to see you're back on with us. I'll give you a moment. Initial reactions to both the Florida and Wisconsin races.
Well, I think as far as Wisconsin, I wouldn't place too much on Wisconsin, only because 200,000 voters historically that voted for Trump in the past November election, they do not vote in the springtime election. So I wouldn't get too excited about that. Another thing that to focus on is the fact that Wisconsin added voter ID, which is something Republicans have been touting, to the state constitution. And that's very, very important. Another thing is, Wisconsin obviously is keeping its color of purple, which means it's anybody's to win or lose. It's a very interesting dynamics. And as far as Florida, I'm not surprised at the results, but I am comforted to know that Florida is still looking fantastic and looking red for Republicans. Other than that, I think that the Democrats have a spark, but they really do not have a massive energy on that, because I think that Trump and some of the policies that he is putting forth, people are still very much in favor of.
So you're not too concerned about that narrowing margin we saw there in Florida?
No, I'm not, only because there's a lot going on with the Republican Party. But what is clear is that the Democrats really have not found their way. There really isn't anything that they are standing on other than things that seem to be a little unpatriotic, meaning, taking up for illegal immigrants, sanctuary cities, looking at all the things that they're standing for. A lot of Americans feel like it's not truly pro-American, that they're looking out for Hamas with the Hamas supporters and the different things, and the take down Tesla movement. I mean, that's pinpointing Elon Musk, and Elon Musk was not elected, but yet Elon Musk is now the new enemy for the Democrats, which they're losing focus. They need to focus on what different kinds of policies they can do to attract new voters. Meanwhile, the Republicans are setting forth new policies and agendas, and they're checking things off. And the Democrats are now complaining, instead of Trump, now they're complaining about Elon Musk.
Robin, what do you make? Noel says there that some things the Democrats are standing up for now are not pro-American. What do you respond to that?
I would say I would look at the most recent Gallup poll, which just showed that 67% of Americans say that the economy is moving in the wrong direction. And I expected that, because as President Trump said, there would be pain, right, in his first few months of being president. So I'm not surprised that Americans are saying that, but it's got to turn around if Republicans have any hope of holding on to their majority in the midterm. That will be the test. These are we're entering into some uncharted territory with this administration, and it will be an entirely, boondoggle if they can't turn things around with the economy, because we're seeing that the NASDAQ and S&P all looking pretty bad historically. So they've got to turn it around if they want to keep their majority.
Okay, focusing more on Wisconsin now, Noel, just earlier I touched on this with Robin about the issue of redrawing district maps. Robin also brought up the issue of abortion specifically in terms of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. What do you make of both of those issues?
Well, redistricting also is very interesting to look at when you're looking at it from all sorts of issues. even in fundraising. It can affect fundraising. The abortion issue, as everybody knows, is a very hot topic. And if you'll remember, 2 cycles ago, the Republicans lost midterm elections on the abortion as a whole because it's a very concerning issue to women. And even women that were historically Republican, they were a little softer on that issue with a right to choose. So that is going to continue keeping Wisconsin as a whole purple because it is a very hot button issue that the Democrats, if you are looking at pro-choice, the Democrats, that is what they offer. But the Republicans, some states are a little bit open to hearing other sides of the argument and are a little bit more lenient. That's why I think Trump wanted to look at more sending these issues back per state.
Robin, as Noel says there, it's a purple state there. Trump won Wisconsin by less than 1 percentage point in November. And this Wisconsin State Supreme Court, it's expected to play a major role in upcoming elections. Are Democrats planning to capitalize on this momentum to make inroads for the midterms?
Yes, but unfortunately, to our detriment, we don't have the richest man in the world bankrolling this. It was interesting to me, just, if you take politics out of the equation entirely, to see the richest men in the world offering $1 million lotteries to voters. And it didn't work. The people of Wisconsin rejected that. So, that strategy going forward, I'm not sure is going to work. And I don't know if this is true or not, but I saw that he's actually canceled some of those checks. But that could be conjecture. I have no idea. I just don't think that Americans are too cotton to the idea of unelected bureaucrats, whether they be Democrat, because there certainly have been Democratic unelected bureaucrats. I'm looking at you, George Soros. Right now we have Elon Musk sitting as one. So I take Republicans, I want to take Republicans at their word. Donald Trump, in his speech to the nation, just said the days of being ruled by unelected bureaucrats are over. I found it astonishing because Elon Musk was sitting right there as one.
Noel, I'll leave the last word up to you. Can Republicans here learn anything from these results from the Wisconsin election?
I think that they need to focus on what they're doing and not get caught in the weeds. I think that the Republicans have the momentum for us, and it was only by a slim margin. Also, we realize that Wisconsin is a purple state, so we're going to continue focusing on things that work and on policies that the American people voted Donald Trump in for.
All right, Robin, Byron, Noel, Nick Poor, thank you so much, both of you, for coming on today.
Great discussion. Thank you.
Up next, Republicans win 2 special House elections in Florida. We'll be breaking down those candidates' performance and how turnout may have played a role here. And the race to succeed Governor Gavin Newsom is getting more crowded. Xavier Becerra has officially announced his candidacy for California governor. That and more after the break.
If joint pain from aging is slowing you down, Omega XL can help you get back in the saddle, just like it did for John Walsh.
Today I'm here at my ranch exercising some of my polo ponies. Got to be really fit to ride these horses. So as you get older, it gets tougher. I was starting to suffer some of that business, and then I ran into somebody who said, look, you should try Omega XL, and look what it's done. I feel better than I felt in the last 30 years.
I'm Reve Walsh. I'm John Walsh's wife. I ride fox hunters, and sometimes I'm in the saddle for 3-5 hours at a time. A lot of work out here.
I wouldn't have been able to do this. Muck a stall, throw hay, do all the things that needs to be done on a ranch a couple years ago. But Omega XL gave me the ability to get back in the saddle. It works great.
Once you try it, you don't want to be without it. Makes a huge difference.
It does. Take it every single day, and there's a benefit. It's made you a lot nicer to me.
If you've been living with pain, it's time to get this special offer, the Omega XL, the joint health supplement that millions have trusted for more than 20 years. Omega XL, it's sourced from the green-lipped mussel, exclusively found in the pristine waters of New Zealand, some of the cleanest waters on Earth. Omega XL, it's natural, drug-free, and it's backed by more than 40 years of clinical research that show it really works. Try Omega XL today. Pick up your phone and call the number at the bottom of your screen right now for a special offer. Buy 1, get 2 free. 2 bottles of Omega XL plus Vitamin XL D3, a value of more than $100. But call today and you pay only $39.95. That's a savings of more than 60%. Plus, it's backed by our 60-day money-back guarantee.
Try it. You got nothing to lose.
Call or go online right now to get this special offer. 2 bottles of Omega XL plus Vitamin XL D3 for only $39.95. Call now.
My name's Stacy. I'm 57, and I was adopted in 2020.
We were adopted in 2019.
And we were adopted in 2021.
We had a house, and it sounds crazy, but it wasn't a home. The one thing that Jake and Emma brought is it became a home.
When I met Dakota, he had just turned 14.
You weren't there for the first this and the first that. I missed the first words, but we got a lot of other firsts.
Watching her say, oh my God, I cannot believe I got my license. And she's like, I passed. And I'm like, girl.
See them grow. It is...
They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
You and you. Kids in the middle.
What I thought was a complete life was nowhere near complete, but it is now.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
Welcome back. 2 special elections for the House of Representatives were held in Florida yesterday. Republicans held on to both seats. NTD's data reporter Kevin Hogan is here with more details. Kevin, give us those results.
So Democrats had a chance to win back some of these seats held by Republicans. National Security Advisor Michael Waltz in the 6th District and former Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz in the 1st District, which is what you're looking at here. So Jimmy Patronis, he's the Florida CFO, he was able to best Gay Valamont, who's an advocate, and that is about a 15-point margin that you're seeing right there. So again, that's a hefty victory margin in some capacity, but it is much lower than what that was in 2024. And we're going to dive into the specifics of that and understand a little bit more about why that is. And again, this is the 1st District. That's over the Panhandle. Moving to the 6th District, which is more in, over the Tampa area, that's or the Orlando area. That's Randy Fine. He was a state senator, and he was able to beat Josh Wheel. He's a public school teacher. So again, this is a sizable margin. He's winning by about 14 points that you're seeing right here. But again, that's much less than it was in 2024. So we're going to take a side-by-side comparison of the general election that we just had last year and then now with 2024 special election, which you're going to see here in the 1st District. So again, in 2024, you're looking at, in the 1st District, of over a 30-point margin for Republicans. So a pretty deep red area, of course, as you can see. But as you move over to the special election, you see that shrinking down to about 15 points or just a little bit less than that. So at that rate, you're looking at about a 17-point shift for Democrats. So that's plus 17 points that they're able to improve their margins in this special election. We're going to dive into a little bit more about why that may be the case in just a second. But again, we're going to go back to the 6th District where that other special election was held. Again, in 2024, you see these big margins, about 33 points. And then now in the special election, that's cut down to about 14 points. So that's a 19-point shift towards the Democrats in this election. So again, that's a very significant amount because it could be due to voter turnout. And here's why. Because again, conventional wisdom tells us, and that's according to governing.com, that special elections typically have much lower turnout than the general elections. So that does not necessarily mean that the sentiment of the electorate is reflected in those vote margins. And what you're looking at here is how those turnouts change for the special elections. According to Pew Research Center, they got their data from ourcampaigns.com and America Votes. So as you can see, this orange part, yellow part, that's the only part, those about 5 elections that they sampled. Again, this is going back from the 70s to 2017 when they took all their data. There's only a few that actually saw a higher turnout in a special election. And then all these other, you can see it's much lower, even going out to about 40 elections that they saw with 50 to 75% lower turnout. So where was these 2 special elections in Florida? Well, those were basically right here. They're in this range. They were about 40% less turnout. And now you might imagine, well, why is that? Well, think about it. According to the New York Times, Trump voters are very irregular. If their guy President Trump is not on the ballot, they might not show up. So now all you're left with are those really regular, diehard voters that always vote, very consistent. And who are they? Typically, they're college-educated voters, which Democrats have an advantage among that group. So that may be why you're seeing these Democrat margins shifting up in the special election, whereas that might not necessarily signal that there's a big shift in the electorate. Back to you.
Kevin Hogan, thank you so much for those results. We're going to move on now. Another high-profile Democrat has entered the 2026 race to succeed Gavin Newsom as California's governor. Former Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra announced his candidacy on Wednesday. NTD's Christina Corona reports.
Javier Becerra, former Health and Human Services Secretary, shared his candidacy on X, sharing it's getting more difficult to achieve the California dream.
Hi, I'm Javier Becerra, and you may have heard I am running to be governor of our great state of California. And that's because I watched my parents, a construction worker and a clerical worker, achieve the California dream. Can we do that today with this affordability crisis? Very tough.
Becerra also emphasized his commitment to addressing California's affordability crisis and highlighted his experience in public service.
When I was Attorney General for our great state of California, and I took on the Trump administration the first time, sued him over 100 times and won. Or whether as Secretary of Health and Human Services, I took on the pharmaceutical industry and we negotiated lower prescription drug prices for seniors under Medicare.
Becerra became a state legislator in 1990, served over 20 years in Congress, and later became California's Attorney General. However, there is speculation that former Vice President Kamala Harris, who also served as California's Attorney General and a U.S. Senator, may enter the race, potentially shaking up the Democratic field. Other candidates include former LA Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis, former U.S. House Representative Katie Porter, and Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco, among others. In 2026, California voters will choose a new governor to replace Democrat Gavin Newsom, who has served since 2019 and is barred from seeking re-election due to term limits. Christina Corona, NTD News.
The head of Britain's spy agency has launched a new exhibition of its archive, shedding light on a covert 115-year-old legacy. Visitors can separate fact from fiction in a gallery of artifacts and espionage. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on the history of the UK's domestic counterintelligence service.
This Saturday, a new installation in London will provide a glimpse into the shadows of the United Kingdom's MI5. Steve Burgess, head of exhibitions at the National Archives, says the exhibition is an immersive experience.
So together with MI5, we explore the 115-year story, all about keeping Britain safe, keeping the country safe. And as you enter the gallery, you'll feel like you're stepping into the hidden world of MI5.
MI5 Official Secrets has been curated over several years to give people the chance to see equipment and other artifacts used by spies.
You'll see top secret files, personal memos, gadgets, photographs, interviews, confessions, a whole range of things.
This lemon was fatal for a German spy, Karl Müller, who came to Britain in 1915. It helped to convict him because Karl Müller was using lemon juice to write secret messages in between the lines of an otherwise innocuous letter.
The letter was intercepted, marking the beginning of the end for Müller.
He was tracked down, tried, found guilty, and executed by firing squad at the Tower of London.
Espionage is about secrets, both stealing and keeping them. London's new exhibition gives the public a peek into the spy game.
Many people are just really fascinated by espionage, motives, the motives of these spies, why did they betray their country, all those sort of aspects. And the files, if you look into the files, perhaps you can get some of the answers to these questions.
MI5 Official Secrets runs until September 28th. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Coming up, we are expecting President Donald Trump's announcement of global tariffs very soon. The press conference is scheduled after the market closes. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I have never seen a production any better than this, anywhere.
Breathtaking. It is absolutely stunning.
I feel better about the world. I feel uplifted.
Invigorating. It was encouraging, gave me hope.
This has just been therapy for the soul.
It's a must-see. Must-see.
Make sure you see it. Make sure you see it.
Coming to Lincoln Center, March 26th through April 13th. Shenyun.com.
Looking to refresh the style in your home? Here at Mathis Home, we can help you find exactly what you need during our spring style event.
Whether you're looking for rustic farmhouse, classic, or modern and eclectic, we have all the latest looks that will leave your home feeling brand new. Whatever your style, we know that we can help you find it at the lowest price. Because not only do we want you to feel good in your home, we know that to earn your business, our prices have to be the best. So come to the Spring Style event at Your Furniture Superstore, Mathis Home.
Say goodbye to harsh, bitter coffee and hello to a delicious, smooth brew. With specialty quality beans, expertly roasted in-house, you'll taste the difference with every sip. Fermented with a blend of 50 enzymes, Days Coffee delivers a rich brew like no other. Made with the highest grade specialty beans available, you're sure to taste the difference. Elevate your morning with Days Enzyme Fermented Coffee.
I hear every day about the products you all wish MyPillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard MyPillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm D-N.Y. Our stories: we're expecting President Trump's Make America Wealthy Again event in the Rose Garden at the White House any minute. And House and Senate Democrats react to Trump's Liberation Day tariffs. NTD's Luis Martinez has more from the U.S. Capitol. Meta has earned a UFC title. It is the first official fan technology partner of the UFC. Meanwhile, an AI warning from the father of the internet. News research reveals that experts believe people will lose empathy and more as AI power grows. From the screen to the stage, some of the biggest names in Hollywood are breaking a leg on Broadway and shattering records.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Senate Democrats try to reverse President Trump's fentanyl emergency tariffs on Canada, while House Democrats have different reactions to the administration's so-called Liberation Day. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on the story.
It's estimated that the average American family will pay more than $5,000 out of their pocket to pay for these tariffs. That these tariffs will cost them $5,000 as the prices of everything goes up.
Senate Democrats are pushing to vote on a resolution that would reverse the tariffs that Trump levied on Canada using the fentanyl emergency declaration. Republican Senator Rand Paul is an original co-sponsor of the resolution, and Senate Democrats hope to put Republicans on the record on tariffs.
Canadian tariffs are not the answer to the solution, because the fentanyl problem is not primarily a Canadian problem. But this is not about fentanyl. It's about tariffs. It's about a national sales tax on American families.
President Trump has already said he would not sign the resolution if it reached his desk, and House Democrats are divided over tariffs.
America is too expensive. Donald Trump and House Republicans aren't doing anything about the affordability crisis in the United States of America.
The auto workers are concerned about, or unions in general, potential increased costs. But quite frankly, they're not unhappy to see someone doing something about trade, bringing those jobs home, bringing the supply chains back home.
House Republicans have brushed off criticism against Trump tariff policies and have remained united.
Let's go back to his first administration. There was the same type of talk about tariffs. The Biden administration didn't change virtually anything associated with the tariff policy of Donald Trump. The president is making sure is that we have manufacturing in our country, that we actually have domestic supplies in our country, that people actually have high-paying jobs, as opposed to just onshoring everything from Asia, which, if you go back to COVID-19, was not in the best interest of the United States.
On a Truth Social post, President Trump called out by name 4 Republican senators who have shown opposition to his tariff plans by saying that Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, Susan Collins of Maine, and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and Rand Paul of also Kentucky will hopefully get on the Republican bandwagon for a change and fight the Democrats' wild and flagrant push to not penalize Canada. It's important to note that the Senate is expected to vote on a new budget resolution and instructions for reconciliation bill this week. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
With the new tariffs looming, which sectors will be the most affected? Let's have a look.
Here are some of the sectors impacted by U.S. tariffs. Trump has suggested tariffs on pharmaceutical supplies, including medications. That would be a major change. Over the last few decades, pharmaceuticals have generally been exempt from tariffs. Trump in March threatened to put a 200% tariff on wine, cognac and other alcohol imports from Europe. That was in response to an EU plan to impose tariffs on American whiskey and other products. The US leader has said tariffs on semiconductor chips would also start at 25% or higher and rise substantially over the course of a year, but he hasn't yet clarified when these will come into effect. On March the 12th, Trump increased tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports to 25% and extended the duties to hundreds of downstream products. The US is the world's largest aluminum importer and the second largest steel importer. More than half of those volumes come from Canada, Mexico and Brazil. At the end of March, Trump unveiled a 25% tariff on imported cars and light trucks. The levy is to be imposed on top of previous duties on imports of finished vehicles, starting on April the 3rd.
Leaders around the world are reacting to the looming tariffs, including Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney.
President Trump is in the process of trying to fundamentally restructure the U.S. economy, and that means that our economy here needs to change dramatically as well.
We do not believe in an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, because that always leads to a bad situation.
On our response, all I can say is that there will be one. It will happen at the appropriate moment after the expected announcement later this evening.
A trade war is in nobody's interests. And the country deserves, and we will take, a calm, pragmatic approach. We have a good deal of trade, a balanced trade relationship with the US, and I believe that our interests are best served by calmly trying to secure a deal which is in our national interest.
I stood up for Australia when they put on aluminium and steel tariffs. I continued to stand up for Australia.
And now President Trump is holding a Make America Wealthy Again event in the Rose Garden at the White House. Let's take a look.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Nice crowd. What a good-looking group of people. Well, we have some very, very good news today, and a lot of good things are happening for our country. Please sit down. My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. Waiting for a long time. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. We're going to make it wealthy, good and wealthy. For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. American steel workers, auto workers, farmers, and skilled craftsmen. We have a lot of them here with us today. They really suffered gravely. They watched in anguish as foreign leaders have stolen our jobs, foreign cheaters have ransacked our factories, and foreign scavengers have torn apart our once beautiful American dream. We had an American dream that you don't hear so much about. You did 4 years ago, and you are now, but you don't too often, and for many years and decades even, you didn't hear too much about. Our country and its taxpayers have been ripped off for more than 50 years, but it is not going to happen anymore. It's not going to happen. In a few moments, I will sign a historic executive order instituting reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. Reciprocal, that means they do it to us and we do it to them. Very simple. Can't get any simpler than that. This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history. It's our declaration of economic independence. For years, hardworking American citizens were forced to sit on the sidelines as other nations got rich and powerful, much of it at our expense. But now it's our turn to prosper, and in so doing, use trillions and trillions of dollars to reduce our taxes and pay down our national debt, and it'll all happen very quickly. With today's action, we are finally going to be able to make America great again, greater than ever before. Jobs and factories will come roaring back into our country, and you see it happening already. We will supercharge our domestic industrial base. We will pry open foreign markets and break down foreign trade barriers. And ultimately, more production at home will mean stronger competition and lower prices for consumers. This will be indeed the golden age of America. It's coming back. We're going to come back very strongly. We're pleased to be joined on this momentous occasion by Vice President J.D. Vance. J.D., thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Where are you, J.D.? No, that wasn't too hard to find. I was looking, you know, he likes to take a low-key attitude, so it'd usually be sit right in front. He's gaining a lot of confidence, Mike, isn't he? And nearly my entire cabinet is here, as well as Speaker Mike Johnson, who's done an amazing job. And with the great success we had last night in Florida, we have a majority of 7. And 7's like a lot when we had it at 1, right? You've done a fantastic job. And many of the members of the House and Senate are with us. Senators, Congressmen, thank you all for being with us. We appreciate it. For decades, the United States slashed our trade barriers on other countries, while those nations placed massive tariffs on our products and created outrageous non-monetary barriers to decimate our industries. And in many cases, the non-monetary barriers were worse than the monetary ones. They manipulated their currencies, subsidized their exports, stole our intellectual property, imposed exorbitant VAT taxes to disadvantage our products, adopted unfair rules and technical standards, and created filthy pollution havens. They were absolutely filthy, but they always came to us and they said, we're violating, we should pay for it. It's all detailed in a very big report by the U.S. Trade Representative on Foreign Trade Barriers, and I'll just hold it up for you. It's available, and you don't have to pay too much. As I understand it, you'll pay nothing. It's a lot of work for something, actually, because it's a special book. It's very, frankly, it's very upsetting when you read it, when you see what people have been doing to us for 30 years. This all happened with no response from the United States of America, none whatsoever. But those days are over. Let me offer just a few examples of the vicious attacks our workers have faced for so many years. The United States charges other countries only a 2.4 tariff on motorcycles. Meanwhile, Thailand and Others are charging much higher prices, like 60%. India charges 70%. Vietnam charges 75%, and others are even higher than that. Likewise, until today, the United States has for decades charged a 2.5 tariff. Think of that, 2.5% on foreign-made automobiles. The European Union charges us more than 10% tariffs, and they have 20% VATs, much, much higher. India charges 70%, and perhaps worst of all are the non-monetary restrictions imposed by South Korea, Japan, and very many other nations. As a result of these colossal trade barriers, 81% of the cars in South Korea are made in South Korea. 94% of the cars in Japan are made in Japan. Toyota sells 1 million foreign-made automobiles into the United States, and General Motors sells almost none. Ford sells very little. None of our companies are allowed to go into other countries. And I say that, friend and foe, and in many cases, the friend is worse than the foe in terms of trade. But such horrendous imbalances have devastated our industrial base and put our national security at risk. I don't blame these other countries at all for this calamity. I blame former presidents and past leaders who weren't doing their job. They let it happen, and they let it happen to an extent that nobody can even believe. That's why, effective at midnight, we will impose a 25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles. Thank you. Brian, I'd like to have you come up here for a second, okay? I just see him sitting. He's been a fan of ours, and he understands this business a lot better than the economists, a lot better than anybody. Brian, say a few words, please, would you? Thank you, Mr. Thank you. It's a great honor to have you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I grew up just north of Detroit, Michigan, in Macomb County, known as the home of the Reagan Democrats. My first vote for president was for Ronald Reagan. I thought that was going to be the best president I ever saw in my lifetime until Donald J. Trump came along. I have watched my entire life, I have watched plant after plant after plant in Detroit and in the Metro Detroit area close. There are now plants sitting idle. There are now plants that are underutilized, and Donald Trump's policies are going to bring product back into those underutilized plants. There's going to be new investment. There's going to be new plants built. And the UAW members, and I brought 20 of them with me, they're sitting right over here. We support Donald Trump's policies on tariffs 100%. So, Mr. President, we can't thank you enough. And in 6 months or a year, we're going to begin to see the benefits. I can't wait to see what's happening 3 or 4 years down the road. Thank you, Mr. President.
What a great guy. He got it right from the beginning. He got it before almost anybody else. This group over there, they got it too. And, you know, we won the state of Michigan. We won almost all of them. But we won Michigan by a lot, and I want to just thank you all. The auto workers were fantastic. The Teamsters were fantastic. Everyone was pretty good, I will tell you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You're going to be very happy very soon, and you probably see what's happening with all of the, not only car companies, but car companies in particular. You see it with all of the ones they're moving, they're announcing day in, day out. You're seeing it. Nobody's ever seen anything like that. With today's actions, we're also standing up for our great farmers and ranchers who are brutalized by nations all over the world. Brutalized. Canada, by the way, imposes a 250 to 300% tariff on many of our dairy products. They do the first can of milk. They do the first little carton of milk at a very low price, but after that it gets bad, and then it gets up to 275, 300%. So when they're figuring what's Canada charging, they say, oh, about 2%, 3%. But take a look at what happens down the road. When you look a little bit, it's not a pretty picture, and we don't like it, and it's not fair. It's not fair to our farmers. It's not fair to our country. And with countries like Canada, you know, we subsidize a lot of countries and keep them going and keep them in business. In the case of Mexico, it's $300 billion a year. In the case of Canada, it's close to $200 billion a year. And I say, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? I mean, at what point do we say, you got to work for yourselves and you got to, this is why we have the big deficits. This is why we have that amount of debt that's been placed on our heads over the last number of years. And we're really not taking it anymore. Through non-tariff barriers, the European Union bans imports of most American poultry. You understand? They say, we want to send you our cars, we want to send you everything, but we're not going to take anything that you have. Australia bans, and they're wonderful people and wonderful everything, but they ban American beef, yet we imported $3 billion of Australian beef from them just last year alone. They won't take any of our beef. They don't want it because they don't want it to affect their farmers. And you know what? I don't blame them, but we're doing the same thing right now, starting about midnight tonight, I would say. And China charges American rice farmers an overquota, it's called, a tariff rate of 65%. South Korea charges 50%. Actually, they charge different, from 50% to 513%. And Japan, our friend, charges us 700%. But that's because they don't want us selling rice and other things. Who can blame them, Madam Secretary? Agriculture, great job you did on eggs, by the way. The egg prices came down 50%. You got them down 50%. Once we got involved, they were going through the sky. The egg prices, they were going through the sky, and you did a fantastic job. Now we have lots of eggs, and they're much cheaper, down about 59% now, and they're going down further. We charge 2.8% for so many things that other countries are charging 200%, 300%, and 400% for. If imposing tariffs and protective barriers made nations poor, then every country on earth would be racing to eliminate these policies, and China would be the first on line. They run a very strong country, but they're not first in line, and the American people are paying a very big price. From 1789 to 1913, we were a tariff-backed nation, and the United States was proportionately the wealthiest it has ever been. So wealthy, in fact, that in the 1880s, they established a commission to decide what they were going to do with the vast sums of money they were collecting. We were collecting so much money so fast, we didn't know what to do with it. Isn't that a nice problem to have? What do you think, Marco? Good problem? Marco would love that problem. But we don't have that problem anymore, but we're not going to have it very much longer, I will tell you. But they collected so much money, they actually formed a commission to determine what they were going to do with the money, who they were going to give it to, and how much. Then in 1913, for reasons unknown to mankind, they established the income tax so that citizens, rather than foreign countries, would start paying the money necessary to run our government. Then in 1929, it all came to a very abrupt end with the Great Depression, and it would have never happened if they had stayed with the tariff policy. It would have been a much different story. They tried to bring back tariffs to save our country, but it was gone. It was gone. It was too late. Nothing could have been done. It took years and years to get out of that depression, far longer than even FDR had that office right over there for a long period of time. The ramp system, it's rather intricate, was built because of him, and every time you walk up, you think of him, and he did a great job in many ways, but it lasted long beyond his terms, as you know. But it's not too late any longer, and we're going to start being smart, and we're going to start being very wealthy again. We're going to be wealthy as a country because they've taken so much of our wealth away from us. We're not going to let that happen. We truly can be very wealthy. We can be so much wealthier than any country. It's not even believable, but we're getting smart. Nearly a century later, in the face of unrelenting economic warfare, the United States can no longer continue with a policy of unilateral economic surrender. We cannot pay the deficits of Canada, Mexico, and so many other countries. We used to do it. We can't do it anymore. We take care of countries all over the world. We pay for their military. We pay for everything they have to pay, and then when you want to cut back a little bit, they get upset that you're not taking care of them any longer. But we have to take care of our people, and we're going to take care of our people first, and I'm sorry to say that. And today we're standing up for the American worker, and we are finally putting America first. In Sleepy Joe Biden's last year in office, the United States hemorrhaged 100,000 manufacturing jobs, and the number was going through the roof at levels never seen before. And our trade deficit reached a record $1.2 trillion, which is unheard of. Since the beginning of NAFTA, the worst trade deal ever made, it was a horror show. I was able to terminate it. They all said you'd never be able to get it out. We had to get approval from Congress to get it terminated. We had to live with that deal. It was the worst trade deal ever made by far. But since the very beginning of NAFTA, our country lost 90,000 factories. Think of what that is, 90,000. Think about putting a map up and putting tax on it. You wouldn't have enough room. 90,000. I said, is that possible? We had it checked 4 different times, and it was actually somewhat higher than that. And 5 million manufacturing jobs were lost while racking up trade deficits of $19 trillion. That was the worst trade deal ever made. As a result of these gigantic losses, foreign nations now own $26 trillion more of American assets than think of this, than the Americans own of their own foreign assets or other foreign assets. The United States can no longer produce enough antibiotics to treat our sick. We have a tremendous problem. We have to go to foreign countries to treat our sick. If anything ever happened from a war standpoint, we wouldn't be able to do it. We import virtually all of our computers, phones, televisions, and electronics. We used to dominate the field, and now we import it all from different countries. A single shipyard in China now produces more ships every year than all of the American shipyards combined. Think of that. And it was a business that we used to dominate. We used to dominate it totally. In short, chronic trade deficits are no longer merely an economic problem. They're a national emergency that threatens our security and our very way of life. It's a very great threat to our country. And for these reasons, starting tomorrow, the United States will implement reciprocal tariffs on other nations. It's been a long time since we even thought of that. We used to think about it a lot. We didn't think about it for many decades, and you see what's happened. For nations that treat us badly, we will calculate the combined rate of all their tariffs, non-monetary barriers, and other forms of cheating. And because we are being very kind, we're kind people, very kind. You're not so kind when you got ripped off with your salaries. My auto worker friends and my Teamster friends and all of the unions that typically voted Democrat, they're not voting Democrat anymore because worker, whether union or non-worker, they're for the Republicans now. That's what happened. But we will charge them approximately half of what they are and have been charging us. So the tariffs will be not a full reciprocal. I could have done that, yes, but it would have been tough for a lot of countries who didn't want to do that. I'd like to see the chart if you have it. Could you bring it up, Howard? This is our great Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick. Thanks, Howard. So if you look at that, China, first row, China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. So 67%, I think you can, for the most part, see it. Those with good eyes, with bad eyes. We didn't want to bring, it's very windy out here. We didn't want to bring out the big charts because it had no chance of standing. Fortunately, we came armed with a little smaller chart. So it's 67%, so we're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. I think, in other words, they charge us, we charge them less. So how can anybody be upset? They will be because we never charge anybody anything, but now we're going to charge. European Union, they're very tough, very, very tough traders. You know, you think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half. Vietnam, great negotiators, great people. They like me, I like them. The problem is they charge us 90%. We're going to charge them 46% tariff. Taiwan, where they took all of our computer chips and semiconductors. We used to be the king, right? We were everything. We had all of it. Now we have almost none of it, except the biggest company is coming in. We're going to end up with almost 40%. Lee Zeldin's working to get their approvals. And it's an amazing company. Mr. Wei, of one of the great companies of the world, actually. They're coming in from Taiwan, and they're going to build one of the biggest plants in the world, maybe the biggest for that. But 64%, we're going to charge them 32%. Japan, very, very tough. Great people. And again, I don't blame the people for doing it. I think they're very smart in doing it. I blame the people that sat right in that Oval Office, right over there, right behind the Resolute desk or whichever desk they chose. Japan, 46%. They would charge us 46%, and much higher for certain items like cars, little items like cars. 46%, we're charging them 24%. India, very, very tough, very, very tough. The Prime Minister just left, and he's a great friend of mine, but I said, you're a friend of mine, but you're not treating us right. They charge us 52%. You have to understand, we charge them almost nothing for years and years and decades, and it was only 7 years ago when I came in, we started with China, charged them. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China in tariffs, and they understood, honestly. President Xi understood. He said, look, I understand, and the other countries, and they all understand. We're going to have to go through a little tough love, maybe, but they all understand. They're ripping us off, and they understood it. Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe. He was a fantastic man. He was unfortunately taken from us, assassination. But I went to him and I said, Shinzo, we have to do something. A trade is not fair. And he said, I know that. I know that. And he was a great gentleman. He was a fantastic man, but he understood immediately what I was talking about. I said, Shinzo, we have to do something. He said, I know that. And we worked out a deal, and it would have been a much better deal, but frankly, there were many years left on the deal that was made previous to my getting there, but it was something. If you look at Switzerland, 61% to 31%. Indonesia, Malaysia, Cambodia. Oh, look at Cambodia, 97%. We're going to bring it down to 49. They made a fortune with the United States of America. United Kingdom, 10%, and we'll go 10%. So we'll do the same thing. South Africa, 60%, 30%, and they've got some bad things going on in South Africa. We're paying them billions of dollars, and we cut the funding because a lot of bad things are happening in South Africa. The fake news ought to be looking at it. They don't want to report it. Brazil, 10%, 10%. Bangladesh is 74%. So you see what's going on. Pakistan, 58%. Sri Lanka, 88%. So what we're doing is we're taking not the full, we could take the full 88%. Thanks a lot, Howard. He's doing a very good job. How's he doing, all right? I think you better take it with you. It's not going to last very long. He's going to put it, it's going to follow you down with the wind. I brought a hat just in case it got too windy, but here, would anybody like a hat? I'm not giving it to a cabinet. I'm giving it to the auto workers. Come here. Thank you, fellas. Get it. That's it. That's it. They deserve it more than our cabinet. Our cabinet has plenty of hats. But you see the numbers. The numbers are so disproportionate. They're so unfair. At the same time, we will establish a minimum baseline tariff of 10%. You notice that on the chart. And that'll be on other countries to help rebuild our economy and to prevent cheating. So we're going to have a minimum of cheating, and we're going to be very severe on the people that at the gate that watch the tariffs and watch the product coming in, because there's been a lot of bad things happening at the gate because the money is so enormous that you're talking about. There's never been probably anything like it in terms of the enormity, and there are a lot of bad things happen at the people that do the check-in, and they're looking at 10-year jail sentences if they do play. We're going to treat them so good, but if they cheat, the repercussions are going to be extremely strong. Foreign nations will finally be asked to pay for the privilege of access to our market, the biggest market in the world. We're right now the biggest market in the world. We had a great country 4 years ago in terms of the economics. We were doubling up on China. We were doing so well. Nobody was going to catch us, but so much of it slipped away over the last 4 years under Biden. I campaigned on this policy throughout last year, and today that promise was made, and it was also a promise, as you know, that was kept. Promises made, promises kept. To any company that objects to our common sense reciprocal tariffs, again, reciprocal, back and forth, back and forth. And I call this kind reciprocal. This is not full reciprocal. This is kind reciprocal. But what we do is we cut it in half. We charge them. My answer is very simple if they complain. If you want your tariff rate to be zero, then you build your product right here in America, because there is no tariff if you build your plant, your product in America. And we've seen companies coming in like we've never seen before. Likewise to all of the foreign presidents, prime ministers, kings, queens, ambassadors, and everyone else who will soon be calling to ask for exemptions from these tariffs. I say, terminate your own tariffs, drop your barriers, don't manipulate your currencies. They manipulate their currencies like nobody can even believe, which is a bad, bad thing and very devastating to us. And start buying tens of billions of dollars of American goods. Tariffs give our country protection against those that would do us economic harm. And many people were looking to do us economic harm. Maybe not so obviously, but they were doing tremendous economic harm. But even more importantly, they will give us growth. These tariffs are going to give us growth like you haven't seen before. And it'll be something very special to watch. I am so looking forward. And Brian, it's going to happen even faster than you said. You know, you might say, but it's already started. It's already started. Work's already begun on plants all around the country. And you see that as before. These are big, rich companies. We have $61 billion started on a big plant going up. It's going to be announced over the next 2 days, and they already started work. Many of these the biggest companies in the world, they've committed to build, build, build. We're going to build, 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 sir. And they came here to see me, and they wanted to know if they could have a press conference. I do as many as I can. I'm pretty busy trying to stop Russia and Ukraine and the Middle East. We got to stop that. We got to stop the Houthis, which we're making tremendous. They like shooting ships down and out of the water, sinking ships. They get a kick out of it, but they're not getting such a kick out of it now, are they, Mr. Secretary? They're not getting such a kick out of that now. But here are just a short list of some of the companies that have already announced and committed to investment. And this is a company that built its factories and its plants in China. Apple is going to spend $500 billion. They never spent money like that here. They're going to build their plants here. SoftBank, OpenAI, and Oracle, great companies, are investing $500 billion almost immediately. NVIDIA, a hot company, is investing hundreds of billions of dollars. They just announced. TSMC, the biggest, most important company in the world of chips from Taiwan, with no investment from us, is investing $200 billion. And they said the reason was, number one, the election of November 5th, and number two, the tariffs. They don't want to pay the tariffs, and the way they're not paying it is to build their plant here. So we're going to go from almost no percentage. We used to have 100% of the chip market. Now it's all in Taiwan. Almost all of it's in Taiwan, a couple of other countries, but mostly in Taiwan. And think of it, we had 100%. We lost it because of people in that office that didn't do their job. They allowed it to be stolen from us. Johnson & Johnson, great company, $55 billion. Eli Lilly, $27 billion. Meta is investing $500 billion. Wow. DeMac is investing $20 billion. CMA, CGM, $20 billion. And then you have Merck and Clarios, Stellantis, General Motors, GE Aerospace, Honda, Nissan, Hyundai are all putting in billions and billions of dollars, and they're committed 100%. So. And we've never had, and this is after 2.5 months. This is after just a short, this all took place as soon as we came out with what everybody wanted to do. You know, I watched a gentleman today on television, used to work with Lee Iacocca, a very respected automobile person, and he said, you know, because they're asking people, they try and get as many negative people as they can, but they can't find them too much. It's pretty hard to find in terms of what we're doing, especially when they see all this investment. They said, so tell me, what do you think of what Trump is doing from the automobile standpoint? He said, I can't believe it. Somebody is finally, he's an older guy, real pro, really top guy, with Lee Iacocca. He said, I never thought I'd see the day when this would happen, where somebody had the courage to go and do what has to be done. This is transforming our nation. Our entire nation is going to be transformed, not only with the cars, but on every single other item that's built. We're going to become an industrial powerhouse. And he said that so beautifully today. In fact, I'm going to find out, I'm going to get a tape, and Bruce, I'm going to get that tape, and I'm going to send it to you out in Long Island, and you're going to play it for the people. And all your union workers and your non-union workers out there, you got a pretty even split. But we have, so far, it looks like we're going to have about $6 trillion of investments, and you wouldn't do that in years in this country over the last number of years. $6 trillion, and that's going to be much higher by the end of the year. And think of what $6 trillion is. You wouldn't have even a small percentage of that under this other system. We're going to be an entirely different country, and it's going to be fantastic for the workers. It's going to be fantastic for everyone. There will never have been a transformation of a country like the transformation that's already happening in the United States of America. It's an incredible thing to watch, and it's incredible to meet with the top people, people that you read about, very wealthy people, or people that are great managers and executives and presidents of big public companies, and to watch the enthusiasm they have now that they didn't have. They gave up on our country. They went to foreign countries and they built. Companies are pouring into our country at levels never seen before, with jobs and money to follow, and it's really beautiful. In the coming days, there will be complaints from the globalists and the outsourcers and special interests and the fake news. Always, the fake news will always complain. But never forget, every prediction our opponents made about trade for the last 30 years has been proven totally wrong. They were wrong about NAFTA. They were wrong about China. They were wrong about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would have been a disaster if I didn't terminate it. If I didn't terminate that, United Auto Workers, you would have had no jobs in this country. You would have had no jobs. It was all going to other countries. In my first term, they said tariffs would crash the economy. Instead, we built the greatest economy in the history of the world. And again, I have great respect for President Xi of China, great respect for China, but they were taking tremendous advantage of us, and I commend them for that. I say, hey, if you can get away with it, that's okay. But, you know, they understand exactly what's happening, and they probably, most of them are saying it's about time they did something, but and they're going to fight, and they're going to fight fair. Everyone's going to fight. You know, it's like, I say to the leaders, look, you got to take care of your country, but we have to start taking care of our country now. We can't do what we've been doing for the last 50 years. From the day of my election, the stock market went up in my first term 88%, with NASDAQ going up 155%, more than any president has ever had in any term in office, by far. And I think we're going to blow that away. And maybe the numbers won't show, but I think they're going to show much better than even those numbers. But what you're going to see is you're going to see activity, that empty, dead sites, factories that are falling down. Those factories will be knocked down, and they're going to have brand new factories built in their place. They're not only talking about renovating, they're talking about brand new, the best anywhere in the world, the biggest anywhere in the world. I have a friend who builds car plants, and I said, I want to see the biggest and the best. He said, well, we have to go to Mexico. I said, no, I want to see it in the United States. He said, we're not building them in there. This is a year and a half ago during the campaign. He said, we're not building it. You'd have to go to Mexico. When I was starting to decide to run, and I went to #1 in the polls very rapidly, I want to say, like, let's say in the first hour. And then shortly thereafter, it looked like I was going to win, and the fake news was saying, oh, no, don't do this. What they don't know is if I didn't win, they would have really been in trouble, because nobody wants to read them anyway. But I tell you what, when I when it looked like I was going to win, I announced that I was going to be doing exactly what we're talking about today. Great consistency, actually, because I've been talking about it for 40 years, but because I saw what was happening 40 years ago. If you look at my old speeches when I was young, very handsome, my old speeches, and that people would say, I'd be on a television show, I'd be talking about how we were being ripped off by these countries. I mean, nothing changes very much. The only thing that changed were the countries, but nothing really changes. But it's why it's such an honor. It's such an honor to be finally able to do this. If you look at China, I took in hundreds of billions of dollars in my term, hundreds of billions. They never paid 10 cents to any other president, and yet they paid hundreds of billions, so much so that Biden couldn't do anything. They wanted to try and terminate it because he had a very special relationship with China. You know what the relationship was? He had a special relationship. But the numbers were so big, that they couldn't do it. So they did ease it up. They did things that they shouldn't have done. They made it a lot more comfortable for them, but they couldn't do it because the numbers were hundreds of billions of dollars, and I did that. And we were on our way to doing something like incredible. And then we had a very bad election happen, a very bad election. A lot of bad things happened. So when I said we got to do it again, I said we have to make it too big to rig. And we made it too big to rig, and we won in records, and it was a monumental win. And it was such an honor to see so many of you, like Brian and your friends, here with us to celebrate, and to more importantly celebrate what we're doing, because that wouldn't be a full celebration if we didn't do this, because this will be an entirely different country in a short period of time. It'll be something the whole world will be talking about it. The critics made the very tired predictions earlier this year, but in February, core inflation dropped to the lowest rate in 4 years, and the price of eggs, as you know, just in a month and a half, we were there for 4 weeks, and the first week I got blamed for eggs. I said, I just got here. They said eggs have gone up at like 250% and you can't get eggs, and they were going crazy, and I said, I just got here. And then we got to work on eggs, and we got to work on everything, and our great Secretary of Agriculture, you did a fantastic job, Brooke Rollins, she did a fantastic job. And as I said before, the price of eggs dropped now 59%, and they're going down more, and the availability is fantastic. They were saying that for Easter, please don't use eggs. Could you use plastic eggs? I said, we don't want to do that. We want to, and you really came through. It's an amazing job. Thank you very much, Brooke. You did great. But likewise, an old-fashioned term that we use, groceries. I used it in the campaign. It's such an old-fashioned term, but a beautiful term, groceries. It sort of says a bag with different things in it. Groceries went through the roof, and I campaigned on that. I talked about the word groceries for a lot, and energy costs now are down, groceries are down, gasoline is way under $3, and people are beginning to be able to buy things and live again. We brought prices way down. We created 10,000 already in a few weeks, new manufacturing jobs, and it was that took place in 1 month, numbers that they haven't seen in a long time. We had virtually no inflation under my term. We had virtually no inflation for 4 years, but after transitioning over to Sleepy Joe, it went from almost non-existent to the highest in the history of our country. They're the highest inflation in the history of our country, brought up by energy and bad spending and bad policy, and a lot of bad things happened. How about allowing millions and millions and millions of people to pour into our country with open borders, where it's so sad to see even now, and I see our great secretary you have done. Stand up, please, Christy. Stand up. Christy Noem and Tom Homan. These people are doing a great job, but gotten them out in records. We have problems with judges that don't want them to go out. They want Tren de Aragua, and they want MS-13, the most vicious gangs ever. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Absolute killer gangs. They kill people. They don't even think about it. And we put them out, and we have judges now, radical left judges that they don't want them to go out. They want them to even be brought back. Let's bring them back. You've done a fantastic job, and please thank everybody. Homeland Security. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. And we now have a border that's the best border that we've ever had, even better than it was my first term. My first term we did good, but this one we really specialized in. We've done really well. And we had records then. We had with the best, safest border. 4 years ago, we had the best border there ever was. And now we have, you've actually matched it and done even better. And we're going to get it down the right way. And we want people, by the way, to come into our country, but we want to come in through a legal process. We want them to come in legally. We need more people. We need people to run these plants and to help the auto workers and the Teamsters and the non-union people and everybody else. But we need people and the farmers. And we're going to let people come in, but they want to come in. We want them to come in legally. They have to have the capability of loving our country, not people that hate our country. We don't want them in our country. And now we're going to pass the largest tax cuts in American history, and that's where we're relying on Mike and John Thune. And we will not cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid benefits, and the Democrats will, because if they got in, the entire economy would collapse. This country was heading for a collapse under the people that you saw. They were horrible. I think one of the reasons people like the job, I have my highest approval ratings because I think they're comparing me to the worst administration in the history of our country, so I appreciate that at least. But Speaker of the House Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader, appreciate it, Mike, John Thune have been to pass the plan for our one big, beautiful bill. I'd like to name it that if you can. One big, beautiful. I made that statement about 6 months ago, and everybody calls it one big, beautiful bill. And it will be that. It'll have everything, the big tax cuts and every incentive there is. And it'll be fantastic. And by the way, for the cars, we're asking for an interest deduction on a loan. So if you build the car only in America, we do it, Brian. If the car's not built in America, you don't get the interest rate deduction. But if you build the car in America, if you buy a car, if it's built in America, then you get an interest rate deduction, tax deduction, and that's a big thing. That's going to be a big thing. I think that's going to pay for itself very quickly, that deduction. Never happened. We've never had anything like that before. Somebody said, where do you get the idea? Because it's so basic. You would think that would have happened a long time ago. It never did, and I'm very happy it didn't because now I can say that was my idea. But we're going to get us closer to the debt extension. We have to get the debt extension passed, and I know you're going to be able to do that, Mike, and it's very important that you do that. And all of the other things that the Senate budget plan gives us, along with working, because I know they're working together, John and Mike, and the two bills are going very well together. We need to get our shared priorities done, including certain permanent tax cuts. We want the tax cuts to be permanent, spending cuts, energy and historic investments in defense, border, and so much more. We're covering everything. These will be phenomenal. There'll be no bill like this going to straighten. One bill is going to straighten out our country for many, many years to come. And we said, let's just do it and let's get it done. And some guys will love it and some guys will like it a little bit less because they're not getting what they were exactly looking for, but they're getting a lot. They'll never, if we get this done, it'll be the most incredible bill ever passed in the history of our Congress and Senate and congressmen, the senators and the congressmen, many of whom are here today, will be very proud of themselves. I really believe that. It's going to set us on a whole new prosperous path. We're going to cut spending and right-size the budget back to where it should be. We're going to do that very strongly. Thank you, Rick. Thank you. John, thank you. Oh, look at all of our senators over there. Oh, boy. That's a nice group of people. But I won't like them so much if they don't get this bill done. That's a great group. And Congressman, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Tremendous people. The Senate plan is my complete and total support. And the House plan, likewise, is very similar. They're moving along pretty much at the same clip. And as soon as you're ready, you'll show it to me. And I'm sure it'll have my support, Mike. Every Republican congressman and senator must unify. We have to unify. We can't be separated. We have to get it done. We have to get absolutely everything we can, and we have to take care of the American people. That's the only thing that matters. We have to take care of the American people first. We need to pass this bill immediately, get it done, including debt extension. From this day on, we're not going to let anyone tell us that American workers and families cannot have the future that they deserve. We're going to produce the cars and ships, chips, airplanes, minerals, and medicines that we need right here in America. The pharmaceutical companies are going to become roaring back. They're coming roaring back. They're all coming back to our country, because if they don't, they got a big tax to pay. And if they do, I'll be very happy, and you're going to be very happy, and you're going to be very safe. We're going to build our future with American hands, with American heart, American steel, and we're going to build it with American pride like we used to. We're approaching our 100th day as president and have been given credit by a lot of people, actually, even some of the fake news. Can you believe it? Which in this case hopefully isn't fake, for having done more in that time than any other administration in the history of our country in the first 100 days. I think we've had an amazing, in terms of what we've done, what we've gotten accomplished. I'd like to see if we can get that war ended and another war from not starting in the Middle East. We have to get Russia. They're losing 2,000 on average, 2,500 people a day, young people, soldiers, Russian. Think of that, 2,500 through some days, but on average, probably over about a 1 week period, it's 2,712, they say. They're losing those soldiers. They're dying. They're being decimated. And they're not from our country, but they're from other countries. But they're human beings. They're from Russia. They're from Ukraine in this period, most of them. And we're going to get it stopped. It's a senseless war that would have never happened if I was president, and it shouldn't be allowed to go on. And I think we're being given good cooperation by Russia and by Ukraine, but we have to get it stopped. It's humanity. It's humanity. It's a terrible thing. This will be a very big moment. I think you're going to remember today. It's going to be a free nation that we're dealing with. We're going to have a very free and beautiful nation. It's going to be Liberation Day in America, and it's going to be a day that hopefully you're going to look back in years to come and you're going to say, you know, he was right. This has turned out to be one of the most important days in the history of our country. God bless you and God bless America. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
One closes what's referred to as the de minimis loophole with respect to imports from the U.S.
Not even how many.
The other is the big one, is the reciprocal tariff executive order that the president just spoke about at length. This is obviously a huge deal, and it's been an honor to be part of your team getting this out.
You're watching now President Trump at the White House Rose Garden signing an executive order on reciprocal tariffs on countries that put import tariffs on the United States. once again, that was President Donald Trump at the White House Rose Garden signing an executive order on reciprocal tariffs on countries, for example, such as the European Union and China, among other countries as well. Okay, Business Matters is next. The deadline for the sale of key parts of the Panama Canal from a Hong Kong firm to a U.S. one arrives today. Still with no certainty the sale will go through. Stay tuned.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
Hi, Mike Huckabee here. Having spent many years in politics, I can comfortably say that the current climate is enough to keep any of us awake at night. And I safeguard my well-being by making sure that I get a good night's rest with Relaxium Sleep, America's #1 trusted sleep aid.
I'm Dr. Eric Siliberti, founder of Relaxium, America's most trusted sleep aid.
Just like you're seeing me on television now, I saw a commercial for Relaxium Sleep back then. I called, and the rest is history.
When I take Relaxium Sleep, I sleep better than I have in years.
I wake up feeling like I've had the best night's sleep.
As a clinical neurologist, I know how essential sleep is for building and nourishing both your mental and physical health.
Relaxium Sleep is made in the USA, has no risk of dependency, and is drug-free. It's also the only sleep aid with Valarest as part of its triple action formula.
I developed Relaxium to help my patients fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and wake up refreshed.
Relaxium Sleep worked from the very first night I took it.
You've got to try Relaxium Sleep for yourself, because once you do, you'll be a customer for life, just like me. And right now, you can try it for free.
For nearly 2 decades now, Relaxium Sleep has been changing millions of lives.
Take Relaxium Sleep. I promise you it'll work.
If you're experiencing sleepless nights or tossing and turning, you need to try Relaxium Sleep now.
I trust Relaxium Sleep, and so should you. Get the best night of sleep guaranteed. Don't wait another minute. Call now.
Mike Huckabee is so confident that Relaxium Sleep will work for you, he's asked us to give away another 1,000 bottles. Get your free bottle of Relaxium Sleep now. Visit tryrelaxium.com or call 800-418-1606. That's tryrelaxium.com or call 800-418-1606.
Kids love it. Parents trust it.
Obviously.
Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Ganjiong Campus courses led by expert educators.
This is spectacular.
Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more.
Wow.
All while having fun.
Perfect.
Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
And for today's Business Matters, Meta is entering the octagon. The UFC says the social media giant has signed on as its first official fan technology partner. This is a multi-year deal that will use Meta's platforms and products to immerse fans deeper into UFC content. Meta owns Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. It also has mixed reality devices that include Meta AI, Meta Glasses, and Meta Quest. The deal includes brand placement in the Octagon, broadcast features, and integration into events. In a statement, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg said he's looking forward to fans experiencing UFC in new ways. UFC CEO Dana White said Zuckerberg and his team are going to do things that will, quote, blow away UFC fans. And a sharp dip in deliveries for electric car maker Rivian. The company posted a 36% decline in the first quarter. The EV maker is battling weak demand as car buyers opt for cheaper hybrid and gas-powered options. In February, Rivian CFO warned that vehicle deliveries would be lower this year due to soft demand. She noted the dip would partially be an impact from the devastating wildfires in Los Angeles. The company delivered around 8,600 vehicles in the quarter. That exceeded analyst estimates, but is down from last year's 13,000. The deadline for the sale of Panama ports and dozens of worldwide ports arrives today, with no certainty the sale will go through. The Chinese Communist regime has relentlessly criticized Hong Kong conglomerate CK Hutchison for offering up its Panama ports for sale to the U.S. firm BlackRock. Since the deal was first announced, CK Hutchison controls 2 strategic facilities on both ends of the Panama Canal. The deal would also give BlackRock control of ports in nearly 24 countries for a total of $22.8 billion. But CK Hutchison would still control the ports it owns in Hong Kong and mainland China. The Chinese regime has called the sale unpatriotic and has tried to stifle it. President Trump sees control of the Panama Canal a matter of national security and has not ruled out using force to reclaim it. Depending on the tequila, another round of shots could bring more pain to you than your bank account. Suerte Tequila said it doesn't plan to pass tariffs costs to consumers. The company explained that it has been able to keep overhead low enough to absorb the levies if needed, but other brands like Jose Cuervo Tequila maker Basil and Don Julio producer Diageo have warned of possible price hikes. At the same time, tariffs could threaten Kentucky's $9 billion bourbon and distilled spirits industry. The state produces 95% of the world's bourbon and is a top state for distilled spirits exports. Egg prices may be finally giving shoppers a break. According to the Agriculture Department, wholesale eggs dropped to $3 per dozen, a 9% decline from the prior week. The American Farm Bureau says the lower costs come from noticeably fewer bird flu cases. Another factor is that consumers have been buying less eggs, which has helped stores to restock. Despite this cost decrease, egg prices remain historically high. The Consumer Price Index says they're nearly 59% more expensive than they were this time last year. A star-studded season on Broadway is breaking box office records. Attendance is up and so are sales, with major names starring in short, limited runs on stage.
You've got Denzel Washington, Jake Gyllenhaal in Othello. You've got George Clooney in Good Night and Good Luck. You've got Academy Award winner Kieran Culkin and a star cast in Glengarry Glen Ross. You've got Sadie Sink coming right across the street in John Proctor. Right behind me, you got Sarah Snook, who is in Dorian Gray. You've got Nick Jonas and Adrian Warren in The Last 5 Years. Robert Downey Jr. just closed in McNeil Uptown.
Broadway World Entertainment reporter Richard Ridge says the shows with the big names have very limited runs because these stars only have a short break from movies and TV shows. He said that means musicals are costing upwards of $25 million and pays up to $6 million, causing an increase in ticket prices so producers can at least break even. 43 Broadway shows will open this season. In addition to the excitement over the A-listers, Broadway mainstays are also generating buzz with their returns. Tesla sales plunged 13% in the first quarter of this year. The company reported it delivered 50,000 less vehicles in the quarter compared to the first 3 months of last year. That's the biggest decline in the company's history. Backlash against Tesla CEO Elon Musk and growing competition in the EV market have affected demand for Teslas. And could the benefits of artificial intelligence outweigh its potential downside? New research from Elon University suggests AI will result in people having lower levels of core human skills like empathy and critical thinking. Researchers surveyed more than 300 tech leaders, analysts, and academics. More than 60% expect AI will have a deep and meaningful or fundamental revolutionary impact on human capabilities over the next decade. As for how the changes will impact humanity for the better or for the worse, about half expected to equal out, a quarter have a negative outlook, and even less see a mostly positive outcome. When it comes to human traits like empathy, moral judgment, mental well-being, and more, the respondents anticipate AI will cause a mostly negative change by 2035. Researchers warn this could have troubling implications for society, like widening polarization. There are areas in which respondents see a mostly positive change: curiosity and capacity to learn, decision-making and problem-solving, as well as innovative thinking and creativity. Many of the concerns raised in the report are centered on how AI will be incorporated into daily life. One expert, Vint Cerf, one of the founders of Internet, noted people are becoming increasingly technology dependent on systems that can fail or get things wrong. U.S. private sector job growth shot higher last month after a weaker February. Companies ramped up hiring in March, a substantial rebound after taking a tepid approach the month before. Payroll firm ADP reports private sector employment rose by roughly 155,000 jobs last month. That's more than economists were expecting and a sharp rebound from February's 84,000 jobs. ADP's numbers don't always correlate with the official jobs report, but they're sometimes looked to as a proxy for overall hiring. The March jobs report comes out Friday. Forbes has released its list of the world's billionaires for 2025, and one thing is overwhelmingly clear. The United States still leads the pack with the most billionaires on Earth. NTD Sean Marshall takes a closer look.
The Forbes billionaire list for 2025 is out, and based on the numbers, the rich are getting significantly richer. There are now over 3,000 billionaires worldwide, 247 more than a year ago, worth $16.1 trillion in total, up by almost $2 trillion from 2024. The number of billionaires in the U.S. tops the world with a record 902. Then China is second with 516, including Hong Kong, and India is third with 205 billionaires. 15 out of 20 of the top billionaires on the Forbes list are located in the United States. Some of the most interesting new U.S. billionaires include Arnold Schwarzenegger at $1.1 billion, thanks to his many years of movie making, stocks, private equity, and real estate investments. Musician Bruce Springsteen at $1.2 billion, with 21 albums and after selling his music catalog for $500 million to Sony. And comedian Jerry Seinfeld at $1.1 billion, getting a big boost of $500 million from a deal with Netflix to show his sitcom for more than 5 years, along with his many years of stand-up comedy and other streaming shows. The United States is the most successful at creating homegrown wealth and attracting immigrant, ultra-high net worth individuals. Events that happen in the U.S. like tariff adjustments and new technologies can easily shape global markets. And there's possibly some good news for the U.S. billionaires. The International Consortium of Investigative Journalists reports that the IRS unit that audits billionaires has lost 38% of its employees since January. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
And for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic began, Disney World will have both of its water parks open this summer. Disney's Typhoon Lagoon Water Park in Lake Buena Vista will open on May 1st. It will remain open for the rest of its scheduled season. And Blizzard Beach in Bay Lake will be open May 21st through September 7th. And as an added bonus, this season, guests staying at Disney Resorts hotels can visit the water parks for free on their check-in date. More than 240 people on board a Cunard luxury cruise ship have gotten sick with novovirus, a highly contagious stomach bug. The Centers for Disease Control and Protection reported the outbreak aboard the Queen Mary 2. The ship is due to return to England on April 6th after a 4-week transatlantic cruise to the Caribbean. The CDC said infected passengers have been quarantined and the ship's crew has increased cleaning on board. The outbreak comes after the worst year for similar cruise ship-based outbreaks in over a decade. The majority of the record-breaking 2024 gastrointestinal outbreaks at sea were novovirus-related. Now that genetic testing company 23andMe has filed for bankruptcy and is seeking a buyer, headlines have raised questions about the safety of using genealogy sites. Here's more.
Genealogy kits have become increasingly popular as more people want to learn about where they came from, but your personal information could be vulnerable.
We really don't have too many laws that protect this information.
Anya Prince is a law professor at the University of Iowa. She says it's important for customers to read these genealogy companies' privacy policies before signing up.
At the federal level, we don't have a general data protection law.
The Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, known as GINA, protects people from being discriminated by insurance companies and employers based on genetic information. And your health information that's collected through these sites is protected through HIPAA. But even if you delete your account, Prince says traces of your information could still be available.
It's not a complete deletion of everything, but it does minimize the amount of data.
Here's how 23andMe works. You're sent a kit to collect a sample of your saliva, and that can spit out a lot of information about you, including health risks for certain diseases, carrier risks, and information about your ancestry line.
Genetic information and health information is so valuable.
23andMe estimates it has 15 million customers. As the company looks to sell, Prince says many companies will be interested to buy because of how valuable that data is.
A medical research company or a pharmaceutical company could find this data helpful. Somebody who wanted to partner with law enforcement to share genetic information might find this useful.
Country music icon Dolly Parton is bringing her signature sparkle to the fashion world. The 79-year-old is teaming up with Khloe Kardashian and the Good American denim brand to launch a limited edition collection called Dolly's Jolines. The collection draws inspiration from Parton's classic hit Jolene and her iconic country style. The line features denim pieces adorned with shimmering rhinestones, among other glitzy details. Dolly's Jolines will be available starting tomorrow at Good American stores online at some Newsroom locations. And U.S. stock indexes closed higher after a volatile session today as investors positioned themselves ahead of President Trump's anticipated tariffs. So markets initially fell but rebounded. Tech stocks led the rally, with Tesla jumping around 5% after reports that Elon Musk may step back from his government role, offsetting concerns over Tesla's 13% drop in deliveries. Amazon also rose 2% amid reports of a TikTok acquisition bid. And that's it on Business Matters. Coming up next, President Trump's just announced a sweeping 10% tariff on imports from all countries. NTD's Iris Tao brings us more from the White House after the break.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
For decades, I've taught you everything I know. How to safely build a fire, and how to control the flames. But I can only teach wildfire prevention. Only you can prevent wildfires.
President Trump announcing reciprocal tariffs that aim to target the worst offenders of fair trade like communist China. How will countries be impacted differently and why the president is declaring a national emergency? Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Town. Iris, good evening. Tell us more about the major announcement in the Rose Garden where you were just at.
Good evening to you, John. So just now, President Trump announced his, quote, reciprocal tariffs plan, and that includes a 10% baseline tariffs to all countries, which will go into effect on April 5th, as well as what he calls reciprocal tariffs on the worst offenders of fair trade, and that will go into effect on April 9th. And meanwhile, Trump calls today a very important day in American history and a declaration of American economic independence. Watch.
This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history. It's our declaration of economic independence. For years, hardworking American citizens were forced to sit on the sidelines as other nations got rich and powerful, much of it at our expense. But now it's our turn to prosper.
And specifically, when it comes to the reciprocal tariffs, what it means is that the U.S. will now be charging half of what other countries are charging the U.S. in terms of both tariff and non-tariff trade barriers. For example, Trump showed a list of the reciprocal tariffs that he's charging to countries, which China is actually at the top of the list. He said that because China is charging the U.S. an equivalent of about 67% of tariffs, the U.S. will now be charging Chinese goods a 34% tariff. And he says that that is to reduce reliance on countries like China, which could create a national emergency that threatens the American way of life. Watch.
A single shipyard in China now produces more ships every year than all of the American shipyards combined. Think of that. And it was a business that we used to dominate. We used to dominate it totally. In short, chronic trade deficits are no longer merely an economic problem. They're a national emergency that threatens our security and our very way of life.
And when it comes to the 10% baseline tariffs that the U.S. will now be charging all countries starting April 5th, President Trump says that's to target practices of cheating. Earlier today, right before the Rose Garden event, a White House official on the preview phone call told us that, for example, China has been rerouting its goods through countries like Vietnam and Cambodia by sending their goods to warehouses there and then rebranding them as not made in China, and that to evade U.S. tariffs. So such a 10% tariffs is also targeting countries like China who are trying to evade potential punishment. So we see now today the both announcements, which Trump declares under a national emergency, both targeting countries, especially like communist China. Back to you.
And Iris, in addition to countering unfair trade practices, what are some of the other expected impacts of today's move?
Sure. So President Trump says that his goal is to, for example, make companies to come to the U.S. to produce their goods to avoid tariffs, and also for countries to drop their trade barriers and unfair trade practices. Watch.
Likewise to all of the foreign presidents, prime ministers, kings, queens, ambassadors, and everyone else who will soon be calling to ask for exemptions from these tariffs, I say, terminate your own tariffs, drop your barriers, don't manipulate your currencies. They manipulate.
Meanwhile, some economists have warned that higher tariffs could lead to higher prices in the U.S. and adding to the burden of everyday Americans. But President Trump today pushing back against those predictions, saying that, for example, during his first term, he also enacted more tariffs, but the result wasn't positive. He says that such economists and even news outlets have been proven wrong, and they should look at the record of his first term to see what's going to happen this time around. Don.
Okay, Iris, thank you very much. Moving on, lawmakers are expressing concern that the Chinese regime's cyber attacks against U.S. telecommunications companies like AT&T and Verizon could lead to even more serious security breaches. On Capitol Hill today, a House committee examines the potential consequences if the U.S. doesn't stand up to China's cyber aggression. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
The Chinese Communist Party and their military intelligence apparatus are already in a footing that we would describe as a wartime footing. They use language to try and communicate to us that they are not in that footing, and they use that language deliberately to deceive us and to make us think, oh, everything's okay, we can just sort of be friends. They do this while hacking us blatantly, while then denying when they get confronted.
Recent cyber attacks from China targeting the U.S. are becoming an increasing threat. The House Oversight's Military and Foreign Affairs Subcommittee probed the impact of the recent Salt Typhoon attacks. Now, this was a Chinese Communist Party operation to spy on calls and text messages of users of AT&T and Verizon. Now, this operation is believed to have targeted President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance while they were on the campaign trail and other U.S. government officials.
They were able to intercept real-time calls and messaging data from over 1 million users. Critically, these attacks focused on gathering intelligence from high-value government and political figures.
And I would say Salt Typhoon is one of the worst breaches our country has ever faced in our telecom infrastructure, and we're still uncovering the full breadth and scope of its attacks. And this work to protect our telecom infrastructure is urgent, and it's bipartisan, and it must be a national priority.
One panelist says that these attacks occurred because the U.S. requires these companies to have a backdoor into their systems so that law enforcement can access their phone data, but this has allowed U.S. adversaries to access people's calls and texts.
Adding mandated backdoors into the equation essentially, preloads the bugs. We don't even have to find them. We know they're there already.
And these espionage hacks may only be the beginning.
It's as if we were driving on a road hitting a bunch of potholes, and then you ask us to come and talk about the potholes. We don't want to ignore the potholes, but it's scarier when there's gigantic sinkholes ahead of us. And I think we'll look back on Salt Typhoon as perhaps child's play.
Yeah, what do you think would happen if the CCP or one of our adversaries were to take down our energy grid?
I think it would sow incredible chaos. I think it would be damaging to almost every American in the first and in the second order, given the food supply chains that we use to eat every day, the energy required to purify water, to process sewage, etc.
Meanwhile, many House Democrats brought up security concerns about the recently leaked Signal chat from members of the Trump administration discussing an attack against terrorists in Yemen.
It is pointless for us to sit in this committee and try to grapple with the real issue of Salt Typhoon and other threats to our communication systems if the people at the top don't take it seriously.
The panel suggests rebuilding cyber infrastructure to make it more secure and changing policies to prevent backdoor access to telecommunications. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
That's it for today. Thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. Stay with us for NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific.